Jeremy C. We like his ideas. They're fair and they're clear. Jezza and me, we agree. We're all for peace and justice and anti-austerity. We're voting Jeremy Corbyn, JC for MP for me. We're voting Jeremy Corbyn, JC for MP for me.
Let's hear from Rob Johnson. Right, now our first speaker for today has come all the way from South Africa to be here, and he was an MP for the ANC under Nelson Mandela. You couldn't get a better first speaker, could you? Please make some noise for Andrew Feinstein.
Hello all. How are we all doing? I feel as though I'm in Cape Town with this weather. All we need is a beach. It's great to see you all here, and it's great to be here to celebrate Jeremy's 40 years as a Member of Parliament. Woo! So what has Jeremy spent his 40 years doing? Well, primarily, he has spent that time showing an unrivaled commitment to justice and equality. He's shown an unrivaled care for every single person, not just in his constituency, not just across the United Kingdom, but across the world. And that is just one of the factors that makes him unique. He honestly, and the reason I'm wearing this t-shirt is because Jeremy reminds me in many ways of my former boss, Nelson Mandela. Why do I say that? The two of them have not only committed their lives to the struggle for justice and equality, but they show respect and care for every single human being they come into contact with. And in fact, quite soon after South Africa became a democracy, then President Mandela walked into a caucus meeting of ANC MPs, who I was very privileged to be amongst. And he said to us rhetorically, although some of my colleagues didn't realize it, "Who here now thinks they're very important?" And a whole lot of people put their hands up. And he knew that would happen. And he said, well, to those of you who now think that you are more important than the people who elected you here, than the people who pay your salary, than the people who you are here to serve, I'm afraid that you are of no use to the people of this country or to our movement, because you are here in service. And that is what Jeremy has done for 40 years. He has served those who elected him in this constituency. He has served the millions who unified around the 2017 manifesto, and he has served oppressed and repressed people all over the world. And like Mandela, he has no interest in his personal status. He has no interest in material wealth. And in fact, he has also spent a lifetime as an anti-racist. While some in his party were benefiting personally from their family companies, associations, and work for the apartheid regime in South Africa. Yes, Margaret Hodge, I'm talking about you. While some of his colleagues were doing that, Jeremy was at the forefront for the liberation of South Africa from apartheid. Just as today, despite the smears, the abuses, the weaponization, he remains committed to the freedom of the Palestinian people. So in conclusion, let me say, while we are awash in lying, self-interested, opportunistic politicians, none more so than my own constituency MP, Keir Starmer, Jeremy remains a beacon of honesty, of integrity, and puts the many before the few. And that is why we want him to continue as the MP for Islington North. Thank you.
A round of applause for Andrew Feinstein. Our next speaker, needs hardly any introduction. It's Stella Assange.
Hi, everyone. I was just in Belmarsh this morning, and I was telling Julian that I was coming here to pay homage to Jeremy. Jeremy has been an incredible supporter of Julian's. He has come to the hearings, and he's also been incredibly personally supportive of Julian and our family, which I really appreciate, because with Jeremy, you really, what you see is also what you see in person. He is genuinely caring and concerned about injustice and understands that it's personal as well. I'm taking this opportunity with Crispin's, and I hope everyone's approval and license to talk a little bit about what's happening with Julian. You might have read in the press what the most recent development is, which is that after some 10 months of apparent deliberation, a single High Court judge behind closed doors in a written decision of 3 pages decided that Julian should not be given a day in court to be able to appeal the decision to extradite him. And we are now given a last opportunity to contest this decision. It's frankly astounding to me that the High Court, given the fundamental issues that are raised through Julian's case, is prepared to not even hear the arguments. Julian, of course, is facing extradition to the United States in relation to the publication of documents that he got from Chelsea Manning, who was the source, a soldier in the US Army who could not live with herself being part of a war that was brutalizing the civilian populations of Iraq and Afghanistan, that was had institutionalized the use of torture. And so she blew the whistle. And how did she blow the whistle? Well, she sent documents to Julian and to WikiLeaks. And WikiLeaks, seeing the extraordinary public importance of these documents, published them for all of you to read. And it's undeniable that this was a public service. And so you have the paradox that Julian faces 175 years in a US prison for the very same actions, the very same publications that have won him dozens of human rights and journalistic awards the world over, including in this country. And so what we're confronted with here is really a step into a new paradigm in which if you provide evidence of state crime, you will be persecuted. The courts will be instrumentalized. The safeguards we've had and cherished for the past 70 years will be ignored and undermined. And you will be sent effectively to your death for doing the right thing. Not just doing the right thing, but actually embodying the kind of world that was being built after the Second World War, where we don't tolerate torture, where we don't tolerate the indiscriminate killings or the targeted killings of human beings without trial. So that's what we're up against, and the UK courts have betrayed all of you, all of us, by allowing this abuse to take place, to corrupt not just the US system where these charges originated, but to corrupt the English legal system by allowing this to go through. Over the past 4 years that Julian has remained in Belmarsh prison without any conviction, we've learned a lot about what the US has been doing. They plotted to not just kidnap Julian from the Ecuadorian embassy, but even to assassinate him. And this is evidence that has come out, and yet the courts still say, we'll send him over. We'll send him over to the country that plotted his assassination. And the thing is, the world is watching. What happens to Julian affects every journalist everywhere in the world because it sets a new international standard. It sets a new standard where if you have the power to get your allies to do your dirty deeds for you, then there are no safeguards that will protect you, not even in the West, not even in the UK, not even here. Julian's case is political. It needs people to rally behind him and say, not in my name. The world's population stands with Julian. The latest polls in Australia show 90% of the Australian population want Julian free. 90. Both sides of politics, the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, are saying that Julian should be freed. Imagine if that happened in this country. How far we are from that. The President of Brazil, Lula, the President of Mexico, AMLO, Argentina, Chile, the UN, the OECD, Reporters Without Borders, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the National Union of Journalists, the list goes on and on. All the subject experts in human rights and press freedom say that this is the greatest attack on press freedom worldwide being exerted through Julian, onto Julian. But everyone is affected. And right here You have the National Security Bill that has just gone through its second reading. And we have to push back. And pushing back by standing with me, with our children, with Julian. It's really important because his life depends on it. On the 24th of June, it's a Saturday at 1 p.m., we're gathering on Parliament Square. There's a statue called Anything to Stay. It's been shipped over since from Italy. It has Chelsea Manning, Edward Snowden, and Julian, and it has an empty chair next to it, and you can stand up on that chair because all of us have something to say. I hope to see you there. Thank you.
Stella Assange, please, a round of applause for Stella Assange. Right, so our next speaker is the General Secretary of ASLEV, who, as you can see, are one of the sponsors of this truck. We're having 3 more sponsors painted on the truck as we speak. And who might they be? Let's find out, shall we? But anyway, please make some noise for Mick Whelan.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, comrades. Don't clap, I come back. It's my absolute privilege and honour to follow those 2 previous speakers, particularly Sylvia Assange. Right cause, please support it. But today, I've had the luxury of meeting many of my heroes the last 45 years as an activist. And people say you shouldn't, but you should. Because when you meet people who spend a lifetime, both as an MP for Islington, but a lifetime in the movement, inspiring others, talking to others, finding out what others need and what they want, both nationally, internationally, and in their communities, they give you the strength to understand what you do as a socialist. My great pleasure was to serve on the NEC of the Labour Party during Jeremy's time there. And that 2017 manifesto would have changed this country, changed austerity. But we wouldn't be talking about Palestine in the terms that we're talking about it now. We wouldn't be having rendition to Rwanda. We wouldn't be talking about bringing people back from the United States if we'd had that 2017 manifesto. We would have a better and a brighter world. I suppose the last thing you really want is a fat cockney shouting at you on a Saturday afternoon. But I'm not going to apologise. From the time that Jeremy first got arrested, protesting against apartheid, he spurred me on. The sad thing was, then I had to meet him. And when I met him, he sat down and explained to me all the things I thought were naturally wrong. Your natural instinct for injustice around the world. He's a polymath. He tells you the reason why things are wrong. But not only does he do that, he tells you what you can do to correct it. And that's what a movement's about. It isn't just about highlighting injustice. It's about changing injustice and making a better world. And British politics is funny. You think 12 years of austerity, 46% of people that are on income support, right, working 48 hours a week and work doesn't pay, 1.5 million people in destitution. Be very simple to rouse people. Very simple to get people up, shouting about a better world and a better future for our kids and our grandchildren. But unfortunately, what do we see? We see a natural right-wing drift in international politics. That's affected the UK. When we talk about left-wing and right-wing these days, what I consider left-wing is now seen as ultra-left-wing because politics has moved so far to the right. But I never thought I would see the day that we would see people being even spoken about not having the right to protest, not the right to have a voice in the year of an election. And of course, Jeremy be at the forefront, as always, fighting those injustices and those things. But as we move on, we do need to change this world and we do need to make it better. And one of the ways we make it better is reversing that awful decision to allow Jeremy to remain the MP for Islington North. When we look at the world in which we live in, Jeremy's legacy, as has been highlighted earlier, isn't just about what he's done in London, isn't what just about he's done in the UK, about the community he's touched, the people he's inspired. But I happen to be in Colombia as Chair of Justice for Colombia, and who was down the road doing something for the Colombian government? Jeremy Corbyn. Who was writing articles this week about what we need to do in South America? Jeremy Corbyn. Who fights for a socialist world across Europe and everywhere that we go? Jeremy Corbyn. So when we talk about Jeremy Corbyn, talk about yourselves. Talk about what you're going to do. What we're going to do in his name. What we're going to do with him going forward. What we're going to do for a better world, a better community, a better future. And I want to thank every one of you for standing by striking railway workers, striking nurses, civil servants, the NHS, and everybody else that's out on strike. Thank you all.
Round of applause for Mick Whelan. Right, our next speaker's come all the way from south of the river. Anyone here from south of the river? Yeah. God, don't tell anyone around here. Right. Now he often appears on the show, and he's a GP in Kent, and I think you might know who he is. His name is Dr. Bob Gill.
Thank you, Crispin, for inviting me to speak to celebrate Jeremy Corbyn's 40 years as an MP. I'm a full-time GP, and I campaign with what spare time I have, and I've been doing it for about a decade. But I first met Jeremy Corbyn in around 2015 at a People's Assembly rally in Westminster, and at that point I'd made a documentary called Sell Off, and I was desperate to try and inform as many people, and I managed to hand this backbench MP a DVD. And he very politely took it, and he tells me he actually watched it since I've met him following that. But little did any of us know that an anti-war, anti-racist, socialist MP could ever be leader of a neoliberal, pro-war Labour Party. So it came as a huge shock to find that Jeremy had succeeded despite all the odds. Much has been said about his period as leader of the Labour Party, in print, in film, in documentaries, but this has largely been ignored by the media political elite, who wish to censor history by omission, by not revealing the truth of the smear campaign against Jeremy Corbyn. What is clear to me is now that we have a very corrupt, authoritarian and anti-democratic Labour Party. If that wasn't bad enough, they have enabled in opposition the worst, most corrupt government with an authoritarian streak that I'm in my 50 years, I have ever witnessed. Things are getting more and more extreme. There's been a huge wealth transfer to the rich under the guise of pandemic spending. There's a socio-economic war against the working and middle class. And there's a bonfire of our civil rights. We have no effective opposition, I'm afraid. But despite the onslaught against Jeremy, he has demonstrated, I think you will all agree, superhuman levels of dignity, restraint, and distinction. See, Jeremy has one big problem. He has authenticity. He actually is sincere. He actually believed in his policies, and I believe he would have delivered on those policies had he been allowed to get into power. So it was never about Jeremy, it was what he represented. It is rare as hen's teeth to have an honest politician with some principles in power across the Western world. Now, in the final few weeks of his leadership, a friend of mine managed to ask him whether he'd do an interview with me. Now, this is a guy who'd been battered, bruised, betrayed, stabbed in the back multiple times. And I thought, do I really want to bother this guy? Because he must have be going through a lot of emotional turmoil. But he agreed to speak to me. We went to his constituency office. He sat us down. We spoke for an hour about lots of things. It's clear he's got an extremely good memory, much better than my memory. He remembered meeting me back in 2015. That's what he said anyway. And another hour of interview, it was pretty clear to me that on many of the issues that I have subsequently learned that afflict our NHS, he was on the right side of all of those decisions. He was on the right side against outsourcing. He was on the right side against private finance initiative scam, which has been used to sell off our hospitals and to shrink NHS capacity. He was fighting against the downgrading and closure of Whittington Hospital A&E. So this is not a man who is just hot air. He actually does what he says. And this, again, as I said, is a rare quality amongst politicians. So I was left with the overriding impression that this is a very decent man. This is a man who didn't seek to gain anything for himself. He had endured sabotage and betrayal from many different directions, but he retained his humanity and he retained his generosity of spirit. And I was left extremely moved and impressed by him giving me his time at a difficult time in his own life. But it's these strengths that his opponents fear. This authenticity, a man who intended to deliver on his promises. The case for public ownership of healthcare, of our utilities, of natural resources is stronger now than in 2019. We are entering sort of an end stage of capitalism whereby all our natural assets are being seized by the super rich and corporations. So Corbyn's legacy is to remind us of the common sense and the clarity and the economic arguments of public ownership and democratic control, which we are losing at a rapidly accelerating pace. So to me, Corbyn's leadership of Labour showed that his policy direction was not only popular, but needed and made economic sense. But we must continue to fight the threat of corporate capture of the state and fight against the theft of our nation's wealth. And Corbyn set us a very good example to follow. Thank you very much.
Let's get a round of applause for Dr. Bob Gill. Our next speaker has come all the way from Leicester to be here. MP Claudia Webbe. Round of applause for Claudia Webbe.
Thank you so much. We know who Jeremy Corbyn is, don't we? Yeah. He's someone that does what he says and means what he does. And I'm so very proud and honoured and delighted to be here with you today to celebrate Jeremy's 40th years as a politician who has dedicated his life to fighting for social justice, for peace and for democracy, and who has maintained his principles and dignity in the face and despite all attempts of the powerful to punish him because he's dared to build our movement. He's dared to show how things ought to be different. That's why they're seeking to punish him. They, the media barons, the political elite, the corporate elite, they come for Jeremy. Why? They come for Jeremy because they come for us. They come for you. The 99%, whilst they protect the 1%. Jeremy has been a consistent voice for our class in this country and around the world. He led Labour with courage, with conviction, challenging the status quo and offering a genuine alternative vision for Britain when many others were either too small to see it or let alone build it. In stark contrast to some, Jeremy has consistently championed the cause of workers' rights, trade unions and public services. Where else should members of Parliament be, if not on the picket line with workers, defending them, protecting them and supporting them? Where else? When the Tories, Labour and the media had all brought into the plight of austerity, he persuaded millions of the truth that it is a political choice, that homelessness is a political choice, that destitution and poverty is a political choice, that hunger is a political choice. These are the political choices made in Parliament and amongst the powerful around the world. Jeremy offered an alternative, a difference, an end to austerity. Jeremy, being Jeremy, of course, will not want to be here accepting all that he deserves. The love, the praise, the admiration being poured on him today. He will say, this is not about him. This is about all of us. He will say, this is about our community. This is not about him. And that's what he means. He also deserved in 2013 to receive the Gandhi International Peace Award. Jeremy opposed the Iraq War and other illegal interventions that caused death and destruction around the world. And he campaigned tirelessly against war, nuclear weapons and the arms trade that fuels conflicts around the world. When Jeremy won the Labour leadership, not once, but twice, the country was already at a low ebb, fed up after 40 years of neoliberalism and the same tired lines of people wearing different rosettes. Imagine if we didn't have the sabotage of 2017, the renationalisation of key agencies such as railways, water and energy would be in public hand and would now be law. And of course, we would have had the full renationalisation of our NHS and an end to the marketisation of our education system. There would have been the proper and decent treatment of refugees fleeing war, prosecution and torture and climate injustice. And not prison barges set up on our waterways. There would have been proper justice for those fighting racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia and all forms of discrimination and bigotry. And proper recognition for an apology, action for historical injustices. There would have been support for a free Palestine and self-determination for the people of Ireland. By standing for something different, something beautiful, he stirred up the millions hungry. Yes, we were hungry. Hungry for the real change that we knew could be. And of course, this galvanized others, terrified them, against him. Politics in this country has been broken by the actions of those people. But the hope that Jeremy stirred, you know, it hasn't gone away. We know it hasn't gone away, despite the best efforts of some to rewrite history and pretend it all never happened. You know, Tony Benn once said, and he often visited Jeremy here, and he was a great friend of Jeremy Corbyn. He once said, there is no final victory and no final defeat. The fight goes on. A fight Jeremy personifies. Sooner or later, yes, sooner or later, that hope, that demand for real change, for the better, is going to bring the house of cards of those who think they are powerful crashing down around their ears. So, my friends, something healthier, something far healthier, more beautiful can be built instead. So let's do all that we can, everything that we can to make sure it happens soon. So Jeremy Corbyn doesn't have to spend and put in another 4 decades. Solidarity, my friends. Solidarity.
Claudia Webbe, a round of applause for Claudia Webbe. Now I'm going to try something that's a bit technical here. It's a voice mail message on speakerphone on the mic, and it's Ken Loach. Do you want to hear from Ken Loach? Right, here we go. It might not work, and you'll all boo in a minute. Oh. Nothing's coming out.
Take it off silent mode. Jeremy, and you'll continue to be one.
Right, here we go. Right, you ready?
Yeah. It's Ken Loach here. I'm very pleased to wish Jeremy a happy 40th anniversary as an MP. You've been a great MP, Jeremy, and you'll continue to be one, I know. And you're much loved by everyone who knows you. You stand for ideas that bring us hope and make us strong. You turn the Labour Party from a Tory tribute act to the biggest party in Europe. It was a party that understood the needs of ordinary people and would have fought hard to make their lives better. You would have shown another world is possible. Public good would have replaced private greed. Common ownership, not corporate power, would have been the centre of our society if you'd kept going. Human rights and peace, not illegal wars and imperialism. We nearly won in 2017. Get organised and we can do it again, and better next time. And then we can say, we can forget all about Starmer, his dirty tricks, and the stooges who support him. I can't be certain I'll be there, but I'll hope to join the celebrations when your 50th anniversary as an MP comes round.
There you are. Ken Loach. Round of applause for Ken Loach. Now, are you ready for some spoken word? Yeah? Are you good at that stuff up here? Yeah, well, you're not sure about that. Right, so look, our next act, our first performer is coming onto the stage. He's from south of the river. There's a lot of you from south of the river here. So let's hear some noise from Mark, Mr. T. Thompson.
I'm so glad I didn't have to follow Claudia, because that's what a real orator looks like. You can see that's what an MP should sound like. And it reminds me of a lot of some of the things that I've heard from Jeremy and other people who aren't ashamed to admit they're on the left. Is there anybody on the left-hand side today? Because I just know there's a big empty space on the right. I'm only going to do a couple of pieces, one off my iPad, which I apologise for, but I only wrote it this week because when Crispin asked me, I thought I've got to write something, and I'm going to imagine that Jeremy's sitting in the front row. I can't quite see him, but we'll imagine. And this one is one that I've done for Crispin previously, and hopefully I'll remember exactly how it goes in about 2 seconds. Some say they don't do politics because it's a game of dirty tricks that powerful people try to fix. I guess that much is true. I too can see what's going on. The same sad singers sing the same sad songs, leaving no space for you and me to show that we belong. But if that leaves us in a rage, which makes us choose not to engage, we leave for them an empty stage to fill with tall tales too short on other points of view. So comrades, I beg you not to turn away. Please know your value to the fray. It'll be a dirtier game if you don't play, and maybe, just maybe, slightly fairer if you do. Thank you, that one's fair game. All these years of training, and apparently my mic technique's not good enough. Can you hear me at the back? That's a good sign. That's a very good sign. Okay, this is the one that I wrote for today. I was still editing it this morning, so if it's a little bit rustier than the last one, you'll bear with me, right? You're a good audience, generous, warm and kind. Hold on, I'm surrounded by people who like Jeremy Corbyn. I know I'm okay. Okay, and this one's just called Jeremy. When you were first elected here in 1983, we were all a little younger, unless we hadn't come to be. The milk snatcher had just been returned after sinking the Belgrano and calling Mandela a terrorist. How the Brits elected her, I can't know. We'd soon see pickets flying from the pits to the top of the British charts. But that night, only you getting elected soothed breaking left-wing hearts. By winning on a platform of principles to which you would stay true, that you'd speak up for the many and not just serve the few. You have been on the right side of history so many times. You stood to oppose illegal war, apartheid, and for a free Palestine. Shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, you were always there. Especially when it seemed those in power simply did not care. So come hell or high water and whatever the weather, those in need always knew they could count on Uncle Jezza. So 500,000 plus of us decided to party with you because you welcomed the many and not just the few. An unlikely bearded hero, that's what I've heard some say. But when you heard the call, you stepped up right away into the tabloid-fueled firing line of public opinion. You refused to be just another billionaire's cowering minion. You wanted a world which would be fairer in what it gives and what it takes. So you stood up for both the workers and the Daniel Blakes. Because it seems to me, this is simply what you do. You care about the many and not just about the few. I was in the Union Chapel to hear you quoting Shelley. And sometimes I had to pinch myself when I saw you on the telly, saying the very things that I wanted to hear said. An unashamed lefty, an inspiring Islington Red. I just wish you had been backed as you deserve to be. Because then maybe you could have led this country closer to real equality. Given half a chance, I don't doubt you would have seen it through. Because your dreams were always for the many and never for the few. Thank you very much. I said I'd be quick. Always leave them wanting more.
Mr. T. Thompson, give him a round of applause. Now, We're moving into stand-up comedy now. I mean, are you the type of people who like a laugh? Yeah? Do you like laughing in the heat? It's quite hard as a comedian. I've been told if it's really hot, people don't laugh. So if he gets any laughs at all, then he's doing a good job. That's just my consolation to him before he comes on, right? Okay. So please make some noise for Don Biswas.
Hello, comrades. How are you doing? Are you well? Come round of applause for Crispin. And the main man himself, Jeremy Corbyn, 40 years. Before I go on to the politics, I should explain myself. I'll tell you two things about me. Number one, I've got a learning difficulty called dyspraxia, which among other things affects my organisation. I have a tendency to lose things all the time. Also true, unfortunately, as a member of the Asian community, living in this country, I'm twice as likely to get stopped and searched by the police. But relax, I can turn these two negatives into two fucking positives. Because next time I get frisked by a police officer, obviously number one, they'll find out I'm not a terrorist. And number two, I'll find out where I left my keys. I've got some good news for you. Boris Johnson has resigned as MP. I remember this time last year, I was running a political comedy night, looking for a Boris Johnson tribute act. Unfortunately, Keir Starmer was unavailable. The reason why I stand with Jeremy Corbyn is because he wants to end discrimination, and I think that is fucking brilliant. We live in a world now with the LGBTQA+ community. We live in a world where you can express yourself the way you want to, where we have 70 different gender types. I think that's brilliant. Because growing up in a traditional Indian household, you only recognise there's two things: doctor or not a fucking doctor. Guess which one I was? This is message to the right. Why do you care if someone wants to be different from you? Why do you care? You shouldn't give a shit what other people think about you or what you want to be. As my dad said to me when he was younger, son, be who you want to be. That's what he said. He said, son, be who you want to fucking be. Which is why he got done for identity theft. Here's the problem. I love Jeremy Corbyn because he's full woke culture. We live in a society where we blame woke culture on everything. I was turning on the news and some Tory MP was blaming the cost of living crisis, blaming woke culture for that. Not true. But then it got me thinking maybe it is. Because if you live on your own and your pronouns are they or them, don't tell the council. Or they think there's more than one person living there. They'll charge you more for your council tax. Like woke culture, another red herring issue that doesn't concern you. The reason why we're in such a shitty position is because of the Tories. It's not woke culture and it's not the refugee crisis. And I get the refugee crisis because I do. Because during the 1970s, my dad moved to England to flee persecution from India. Unfortunately, my mum managed to track him down. Let me tell you why we've got a refugee crisis. Why brown men are arriving to this country via boat, risking their lives. Because it's the Tories have blocked all the safe routes. They're putting them in crappy hotels because they stopped processing. That's what they've done. And because of Brexit, the disaster as Brexit's been, there's been a massive job shortage in this country. And actually, immigrants bring more to this country than they actually take out. And there is a fucking job shortage in this country. Do you want to know that the biggest job shortage in this country is? Joke writers. That's why there's no punchline to this bit. It's a red herring issue. I am against the EU, but I voted for Remain because I couldn't trust the Tories. We're dealing with Brexit. And it turns out it's fucking true. Earlier this year, Brexit has led to food shortages. Food fucking shortages. Who would have thought of that? When that news story broke, I went on an anti-Brexit rant in a comedy club located in an area that heavily voted for Brexit. And I wasn't fucking scared. because there were a lack of tomatoes for the audience to throw at me. Where else do I stand politically? I'm with Jeremy Corbyn. I'm anti-austerity. It doesn't work. Did you know the latest bailout deal imposed onto Greece by the European Union means more austerity for the Greek people, even though in the past it's reduced our economy by 25%. But wasn't it Einstein who said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results? Now, no one's laughing, but wasn't it Einstein who said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again? I've got to one thing to tell you. I've done that joke loads of times at Crispin shows, and you've probably heard it before, but it's never got the response I wanted, and that's why I'm doing it again. After all, wasn't the definition of insanity doing the same thing again and again? I'll leave with a few more bits. I've been doing stand-up comedy for 16 years now, and apart from you guys, no one knows who the fuck I am. That's because I talk politics. I do gigs on the London open mic circuit. Allow me to explain. They're the type of gigs where you get 30 comics on the bill, and if you're lucky, one audience member. So it's less of a gig and more of a hostage situation. But the reason why I do these gigs, it allows me to talk about stuff I'm interested in, such as the Bilderberg Group. If you don't know them, they're like the World Economic Forum, unelected power. Hundreds of the bankers, media types and politicians who meet every year in secret, in their own words, to have off-the-record discussions about foreign and economic policy. And to me, the meeting in secret part smacks of a lack of democracy. And some of these members include Tony Blair, Obama, Bush. Now, if I was to see Tony Blair walking down the street, I walk up to him with my weird dyspraxic walk, which you couldn't tell out when I was younger, because I was a child of the mid-90s. So everyone thought I was fucking mad for it. Firstly, what I'll do is I'll confront Tony Blair about the Bilderberg Group, because that's what I'll do. And number two, and more importantly, be like, Tony mate, if you want to meet people in secret, why not come to my next London open mic night? Things are getting fucked at the moment. I remember when I first did comedy, 16 years ago. Look what's happened now. We've got Brexit, which has been an unmitigated disaster. Thousands of disabled people died at the hands of austerity. We've got a pandemic where we don't even know if they're telling us the fucking truth. An illegal war after illegal war killing brown people. Things have gotten so depressing now that when I turn on the TV to watch the news, I watch a little bit of internet porn afterwards. Just so I can watch fewer people getting fucked. And I'll leave with this. Give us a cheer if you're not a fan of Keir Starmer. The reason why we need Jeremy Corbyn, because the left wing is the great part of the party. In the past, we've had Tony Blair, we've had people like Barack Obama and Joe Biden, and they've done fuck all to end neoliberalism, have they? They've made the rich bankers richer and the poorer poorer, and they don't give a fuck about our civil liberties either. I'll tell you some of the things these people have done. When Barack Obama was in power, he locked people out in jail without trial. Places like Guantanamo Bay, some of the awful things he's done, such as waterboarding and sending people, depriving of sleep up to 127 hours by sending them to a fucking London open mic night with 30 comedians and one audience member. I've been Don Biswas, thanks very much, cheers.
Round of applause for Don Biswas. Right, our next act has come all the way from Bristol to get here, and he has, I think everyone would know one of his songs. I'll let you find out for yourselves about what that song is anyway. Please make some noise for Craft D.
Yes, what's good, people? You okay? Excellent. Thank you so much, Crispin, for inviting me. It's absolute honour to be here, celebrating such an incredible human being, but also to speak alongside Stella, Assange, Andrew Feinstein, all these amazing speakers who I have so much love and respect for. When I go to do like rap or poetry or go into a school, different places, people might ask, who's your hero? And for me, it's a very, very, very obvious answer. There are people who do incredible things, and there are people who every single day of their life commit to justice, peace for every minority, every marginalized group. You know, today, yesterday, tomorrow, this man will be there fighting for somebody on a protest, a picket, supporting a community group, not just in every corner of Islington North, but in every corner of this country. And that is just something completely unfathomable to me. And I've got friends from so many different areas of life whose grandma or granddad or somebody personally knew and was helped by Jeremy Corbyn, and that's come through the family. So it's a very, very, very huge pleasure to be here. I'm going to do a couple of pieces for you, and this first one is kind of going on from what I just said, all that Jeremy's done and continues to do. There is so much to come. There's going to be these trade unions, there's going to be all the groups that many of you here are a part of today, and there's going to be opportunities to make something incredible happen. And we're all going to be ready. And throughout history, there's been incredible people who have done amazing things, and some of them never got their flowers, some of them were murdered, some of them never got the chance to speak, and they've created the conditions that we live in today where we can express ourselves. We do have these rights, and this song I've been writing, I'm going to do it a cappella, tries to bring together that history with the present, with what can come. We're calling to see you again. We're falling again to the shadows. Roll the oars, we're making it close to shore, guided by the enslaved whose graves were the overboard. No remorse as they're waging a culture war. We're raising the ghost and spirit of Haiti and Louverture, the spirit of Che Guevara, the spirit of Tony Benn, the spirit of Mossadegh. We're fearing the ghost of them. From Palestine to Britain, we listen and don't forget, whose mission was only seeing the systems of old suppressed, from martyrdom in life to stardom in death. So if Corbyn won't be lauded until after he's left, it's because the hero's voice is never heard while scarred in the flesh. Unless we end what was started, then it's the start of the end. Whether it's real or it's fake, whether leave or remain, we're all people in pain. Believe that we are the same, all living in the systems of a slave cash economy and governed by descendants of that same aristocracy who magnify the images that amplify our differences, from black and white to thick and thin, flicking through the sands of time, from samurais and pyramids to cattle life and businesses. The flag they fly is littered with the battle cry of privilege to sanitize the mercenaries, sanctify the murder sprees. From paradise to purgatory, we're trapped inside eternity. But if Dante's fire circles, then think back to lines that Langston writes. They had to try to further dream, and that is why the murdered keep calling. They're calling to see us again. We're forming again through the shadows. Thank you very much. I wrote this next song before Jeremy Corbyn had been suspended shamefully from the Labour Party, but I released it just after it had happened. And what followed was something that came from a feeling of isolation, writing a song as often as I do, whether it's poetry or lyrics, from a place of isolation, wanting to get my thoughts across because I don't feel like they're represented. And you put something out into the world and you never know what will happen. But thankfully it connected with so many other people and gave me such a renewed sense of hope and joy and the idea that there's so many great people out there and so many great things will happen. If I can request the reset of the beat, that would be amazing. Thank you very much. So yeah, this is a song called Letter to Corbyn. Hey. February 15th, 2003. 8 years old, I walked out with the biggest crowd in the street. You poured your heart into Hyde Park. We were wild with a speech, opposed the war and defended the powerless powerfully. 15 years later, I met you, the man we've always known you are. No camera crew attached to you, just there supporting local art, showing heart. You spoke to everybody in the room. I turned on the telly, saw those topics in the news, cropping and chopping you into a sacrificial lamb. How they said you of all people were anti this and that. How it never stopped you carrying that Palestinian flag. The man we didn't deserve, the man I wish we'd had, should have been leader for years. If not for leeches, for peers and media smears, misleading people or feeding them fears. When we think of those dying, we cry the deepest of tears, knowing how much you'd have cared for them. Has that dream disappeared? No, you changed the way of thinking, the collective state of mind. You elevated lives, I know you elevated mine. Inspired belief into people who'd have never raised a sign. We'll see the fruits of your labor in a generation's time. The many in the streets who sang let's vote Labour took the fight to the front door from the echo chamber. You gave voices to the dead lives that never made the headlines. History will forget lies and paint you in the best light. And at the very least, this could be the learning curve. You changed politics from a dirty word for circle jerks. You were the early bird out here unearthing worms. Next time the words won't hurt, cause we've already heard the worst. 2017 MPs in senior positions worked against their own party, seeking division. Cornered the cause, call it corporal punishment. 2,500 votes and forming a government. December 12th, 2019. I'm awake all night just thinking of the vulnerable people sentenced that day to die for 5 years of a prejudiced killer and callous ways of life. Next day I read Tommy Corbyn's letter and it made me cry. Thank you for empowering the people with empty hands. Thank you for believing we can dream of a better land. Thank you for being you and helping me be a better man. The best MP we ever had and PM we never had. Thank you Corbyn for all the hope you've inspired. Thank you Corbyn for showing us light and stoking the fires. Thank you Corbyn, I'm sorry the country voted for liars. Thank you Corbyn, thank you Corbyn, thank you Corbyn for all the hope you've inspired. Thank you Corbyn for showing us light and stoking the fires. Thank you Corbyn, I'm sorry the country voted for liars. Thank you Corbyn, thank you Corbyn. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you all of you. I'm going to end with a very short piece. I think I've just about got enough time. Being the 40th anniversary of Jeremy Corbyn becoming an MP, I wrote a little thing on the train, literally from Bristol on the way down here, and I've got to shoot off in about an hour, unfortunately, but it's been great to be here and see everybody. So this is a short piece, and I was practicing that, and I just wrote a few lyrics to follow on from it. Thank you for saying we can make more than make do, for standing up for everybody, even the ones told to hate you. Thank you for the selflessness, the real great in Great Britain, for taking every stand against hate and racism, for redefining leadership and setting an example. My full thank you wouldn't be a letter, but a parcel for every tireless day of work, from the leader's seat to the back bench, for always being in the room, never on the damn fence. Thank you for all you've done for us and all you'll do hereafter. Hope can be the hardest thing, but we know living in fear is harder. Thank you for your truth talking, always giving a clear answer. Thank you for never lowering yourself to Tony Blair or Keir Starmer, for standing up to corrupt politicians funded by far-right mates, and for always standing up against apartheid states, for every murdered person from Grenfell to Palestine, for every single protest and picket where you stand in line, for every plant root in the dark room you watered, and every single seed which one day will be the biggest tree, the shade of which you may not sit beneath. For 40 years of unfathomable, unwavering consistency, for 40 years of being on the right side of history, for 40 years of kindness, empathy, hope, respect, to do the right thing when it's the hardest thing, is to truly live with no regrets. For 40 years of standing up for the most oppressed, giving hope to them. For 40 years of peace, love and justice that we won't forget. Thank you, Jeremy Corbyn. Thank you, all of you. Thanks for having me. I've been crafty. Have a great rest of your weekend. Enjoy the sun. Thank you.
A round of applause for Craft D. Our next speaker is, again, there's a lot of South London here. She's come all the way from South London. It's Paula Peters of DPAC.
Solidarity to everyone marking Jeremy Corbyn's 40th year as an MP. And let's be totally clear on this, that Jeremy Corbyn has consistently, since he's become a Member of Parliament, supported disabled people for the fight for equality, inclusion and social justice. And no more so than the last 13 years, when we've had the abhorrent coalition government, then subsequent Tory governments, who have literally destroyed our welfare state and NHS. He has consistently stood up and voted against every cut that the governments have proposed, and all power to him for that, and we thank him very much for doing that. When DPAC set up on the 3rd of October 2010, when we stormed Parliament with blocked roads, Jeremy's come out and spoken to us, and he's consistently raised the issues that we're going through currently. And he's always 110% supported us. So let's give it up for Jeremy Corbyn. But I now ask all of you here for this. You have seen the Tory graph. You've seen Jeremy Vine's appalling rhetoric on his Channel 5 show, where he's called young disabled people snowflakes and the 6 certificate generation, where he has turned around and said, are disabled people worth supporting? Well, here's a message to Jeremy Vine. Yeah, we are worth supporting, and we pay tax, we pay VAT, and this is a message to the Tory graph. You carry on with this appalling rhetoric of yours. We won't only call you out, we will shut you down. So this is a message to the right-wing media. Not any of you editors and dark corner journalists are exempt from being disabled yourself. Not anyone in this park today is immune from being disabled themselves. We have 4 million disabled people in abject poverty today. 1 in 6 families have a disabled member. They're in poverty today. But what this government didn't expect was a fight back from disabled people, the likes of what they've never seen. We have been the sharp end of resistance these past 13 years. And this is a message to Rishi Sunak and Mel Stride. You can bet anything you like that we will continue to resist you. We will continue to defy your anti-protest bill, and we will shut the roads down in the fight for equality, inclusion and social justice. While disabled people are dying, and over 327,000 disabled people have died as a result of austerity from 2012 to 2019. This government has blood on its hands. They have been found guilty of grave and systemic human rights violations under the United Nations Convention of the Rights of People with Disabilities. So while we are having our rights violated and why disabled people are dying, this is a message to the Tories. While we have no justice, you will have no peace. And you can expect more resistance from us. But this is a message to Keir Starmer. We are absolutely outraged that you've reneged on scrapping social care charges. We are outraged that you have reneged on the National Care Service. And this is what we demand. We demand a fully funded social care system, paid for by progressive taxation, free at the point of need, and we demand no less. We demand a national health service in public hands, paid for by progressive taxation, where NHS staff are paid a decent wage with decent working conditions, because we want the NHS for our children and our children's children. And I need to end with this. We need your support going forwards. Platform us at your meetings and at every event you have, because disabled people need to be heard, because there's an old term in our movement: it's nothing about us without us. Solidarity, everyone. Here's to Jeremy.
A round of applause for Paula Peters. Our next speaker is from north of the river, so you'll be quite happy about that. She's an officer of Jewish Voice for Labour. Anyone from Jewish Voice for Labour here? We've got their logo up there. A round of applause for Jenny Manson.
Hello everybody, can you hear me? Yes. It's an enormous pleasure to be here to talk about Jeremy and one other person, Ken Loach. Both these people are genuine socialists who support all of us as they support all under attack, and both under continual and vicious attack for what they stand for. And the point I want to make today is that wherever the attacks are coming from, they're political. Don't be blinded whether it happens to be a legal case or the Labour Party's so-called process. This is a political attack on people like Jeremy and Ken Loach. Now, talking of that, I've got the buckets at the ready for Jeremy, which I will talk about in a moment, but Frida and either Julie and Muriel are going to be coming around with buckets in a moment. But I want to start with another unusual feature of these two people. They both have understood for many years the extent of injustice to Palestinians, an injustice that is turning increasingly violent. And of course, neither of them have a long history of anti-Semitism. The recent calumny against Ken Loach is that he has a long history of anti-Semitism. He has been persecuted for his views on Palestinians and Zionism for the last 35 years. Neither of them have ever said or done anything anti-Semitic, of course. Now, if you want to hear some anti-Semitism, just to give you some pleasure, listen to what Nelson Mandela said. I'm paraphrasing, I'm leaving out some words. The rich, plutocratic Jew has no country, no kindred. Whether as a sweater or a financier, he's an exploiter of everything he can squeeze. He is behind every evil that governments do, and his political authority is always exercised in the dark, is greater than that of parliamentary majorities. Now, I read out that horrific piece of text because I want to remind all our opponents that we may be the wrong sort of Jews, but we are Jews. I'm trembling now. I can hardly read that kind of thing without feeling real fear. You can see my arms are trembling at that sort of hatred of Jews. The kind of hatred of Jews which, of course, has never, ever, never would be expressed by either Jeremy Corbyn or Ken Loach. So the accusations against all of us, and Ken and Jeremy, and nearly always about who we support, who we associate with. It's apparently anti-Semitic to defend those accused of anti-Semitism, whatever the evidence. Of course, none of us would ever knowingly defend real anti-Semitism, but there is no fair process in the Labour Party, in universities, it seems, and so people accused of anti-Semitism defend our support unless we have any evidence to the contrary. So I want to go back to today's man, somebody called Jeremy Corbyn. Now, getting to know Laura and Jeremy over the last few years has been one of my great pleasures. I mean, people who don't know me don't know that I don't come from the left. I was known as the soft left locally. So this has been a new experience for me and a very wonderful one to get to know people on so-called the left. Now, as you know, and that's what the buckets are about, Jeremy has been hit by legal actions in a deliberate attempt to drive him out of politics and to bankrupt him. Now, I know many of you will be critics of lawyers and critical of the legal processes, but I want to remind all of us that when we need lawyers, we need lawyers. Think of that aeroplane on the wherever it is, what aeroplane sit on, waiting to fly to Rwanda with terrified asylum seekers sitting in it. And remember who saved them. It was lawyers who saved them. Remember also the Fraser case. For people who don't know, Fraser sued the University and College Union and lost his case badly. And this is what the judge said in his summing up. Lessons should be learned from this sorry saga. We greatly regret that the case was ever brought. At heart, it represents an impermissible attempt to achieve a political end by litigious means. It would be very unfortunate if an exercise of this sort were ever repeated. Well, we know it's repeated. It's repeated against Jewish Voice for Labour, against Paddy French, and against Jeremy Corbyn. So it's a political attack on Jeremy for his socialism, for his understanding of Israel-Palestine, and personally, his particular sincerity and integrity and his compassion. It's unusual in politics, and that's what makes him loved. Not many politicians are loved, but Jeremy is loved. But these attacks by legal process are silencing freedom of speech and must be resisted. And the costs inhibit many of us from defending themselves, but people must be defended, and it was right for Jeremy to defend himself, but unfortunately it incurred costs. So as I started all this, I was saying that of all things, Jeremy Corbyn's form of socialism is to support all of us. And it really is time we as socialists, we give the boost to his legal fund, which is still, wonderful though it is, has got some gaps. And I want to thank Carol Morgan, I don't know if she's here today, who started the legal fund. So, you can just type in Jeremy's legal fund, I've found, but there is a longer link which I can give people, and you probably know, but Jeremy's legal fund gets you into Carol's legal fund. But what I would ask you to do is to notice the buckets that are perhaps going round already and give as generously as you can today, so that at the end of the day, we've done something concrete for Jeremy, not just support him, not just love his politics, but help him in this particularly unpleasant legal case. Thank you.
A round of applause for Jenny Manson. Right, and look, it's on and off. There's so many speakers. I have no time to speak, but the next speaker did give me a great laugh, and it was great to see her in a cafe in Liverpool, confronting Keir Starmer and telling him exactly what she thought about him, and she's come all the way from Liverpool to be here today. A round of applause for Audrey White.
Thanks very much, comrade. It's absolutely fabulous to come here with a friend of mine who is the chair of the Merseyside Pensioners Association. We were very proud to do that to Starmer. And, you know, it opened the floodgates. It absolutely opened the floodgates because nobody was ready to say anything to him. Certainly not the Parliamentary Labour Party, certainly not the mainstream media, and certainly not any of the press, and certainly the members even. The members have been blackmailed, threatened with expulsion and suspension if they dare open their mouths on anything that whiffs of socialism. So we started as an organisation that whole demise, if you like, of Starmer's bluff and bluster and lies. So we're proud that we did that. But what we have to say is, you know, solidarity with Jeremy. Let's celebrate him. Let's, more than anything, celebrate his ideas. Celebrate the fact that we were infected. Every one of us, the length and the breadth of the country, were infected with socialism because for the first time we were allowed to put forward a programme of socialism, of socialist policies that echoed the length and breadth of the country. And you know what? All of those policies and more, we had people in the Merseyside pensioners. Anybody my age remembers that we had council houses, a massive programme of council houses in 1945 after the Second World War, where we never had a penny. We brought in a health service, absolutely wonderful health service, and we had no prescription charges. We had parks that were looked after. It wasn't a perfect world, but it's a damn sight more perfect than the world we've got now. And I make no apologies for swearing. This country is an absolute shit show. It really is. And the working class are paying the price for the collapse of the economy. We've got to make sure that our voices are heard. We won't be silenced by Starmer. We won't be silenced by the mainstream media. We won't be silenced by any of them. Even if the trade union movement fail us, the leaders fail us, it's always the grassroots that win for us. It's always the grassroots, the people at the bottom who put that much pressure on the establishment and the bosses and the mainstream media that we actually end up winning and making gains. So don't be depressed. Don't be despondent. Celebrate the ideas. Celebrate Jeremy. Make sure that we're focusing on policies every time we have an opportunity to speak. Every time we have a minute to say anything, we make sure that we're gathering people to us. We gather people to us on the basis of shared ideas of a better world. As we move forward now to possibly a third world war, we have to make sure that every time we speak for peace. We speak for peace. We speak for a negotiated settlement. We don't get intimidated because Starmer tells the Labour MPs, you take your name off the Stop the War letter that calls for a peaceful negotiation. You don't take your name off. You don't be cowards. You stand up and you fight for peace like Jeremy does. We've got a massive job to do, but I think everyone should remember those socialist ideas are still out there. There's a massive movement where trade unionists are learning every day. Trade unionists are getting more and more and more confident. They're gaining in strength and they're recognising their power. So we have to tap into that, and we have to make sure when on the picket lines we're talking about victories. The victories that loads and loads and loads of trade unionists have had recently. Let's not go along with the narrative of the Labour Party that you can't win anything. We fight for everything, and we make sure that we are an organisation, we are a body of people, we are a mass of people that is so massive and so powerful that they cannot defeat us. And it may not happen now, it may not happen next year, but I'll tell you what, it's on the cards, because people can't stick any more of this government, the weakness of the Labour Party, and the trade union and labour movement will build a powerful organisation, because I'll tell you why, we have no option. That's what the task is ahead of us. So thank you very much for inviting me down here and celebrate Jeremy Corbyn's magnificent tenure of 40 years of being an honest man, a man of integrity, a man who makes sure he's informed before he opens his mouth on any subject. He makes sure he knows what he's talking about, and he makes sure he gives the nuanced arguments. And we don't have another politician that barely touches him. And that's why he's the enemy. That's why he's the enemy of the ruling class. And I hope he stands for Parliament. And I hope he stands, and I hope he fires up a movement that every one of us considers taking a position, either as a councillor or as an MP, and build a movement that's far removed from the disgusting organisation that the Labour Party is. So thank you very much.
Round of applause for Audrey White. Right, our next speaker is from Stand Up to Racism. Can you make some noise for Sabi Dalu?
Thank you, Crispin, and well done to all of you for coming here today. What a lovely day to be celebrating Jeremy Corbyn and 40 years of being an MP for Islington North. So I'm here because I'd like to pay tribute and mention a few aspects of Jeremy Corbyn's campaigning work against racism, because he's got a very strong record, and it's very important that we make that record. So firstly, before he became an MP, when he was a councillor in Haringey, he supported the demonstration against the National Front in Wood Green, which stopped the NF from terrorising the local African, Caribbean, Asian and Jewish communities. Some of you may remember that the National Front was a very racist and anti-Semitic fascist organisation, and well done to everyone who then stood up to their campaign against those communities that were being targeted at the time. When he became an MP in the 1980s, Jeremy Corbyn was very active in the anti-apartheid movement, and he got a bit of stick from the old Bill, which we've seen lots of pictures of him being arrested by the police at demonstrations. He also actively opposed the campaigns against the SUS laws at the time, which targeted the African Caribbean community because of the institutional racism in the police force. And then in the 1990s, these are just a few notable examples of what Jeremy Corbyn did in terms of anti-racism. There is many, many more. So in the 1990s, he addressed the Anti-Nazi League Festival in Brockwell Park that was headlined by the Manic Street Preachers and Rage Against the Machine. It was a very big anti-racist festival. He spoke at that. He also addressed the demonstration organised by the Anti-Nazi League in Welling, which called for the closure of the British National Party headquarters. And you will remember that Welling was where Stephen Lawrence and Roland Adams were killed in a racist attack. And he supported those family campaigns, the Lawrence's campaign for justice and other victims of racist attacks and their campaigns for justice. He also supported the Anti-Racist Alliance, the National Assembly Against Racism and its numerous campaigns, including Speak Out Against Racism, Defend Asylum Seekers, and its campaigns to implement the recommendations of the Stephen Lawrence Inquiry Report on institutional racism in policing and other institutions. And then in the noughties and onwards, he supported the establishment of Unite Against Fascism, its campaigns against the British National Party. They were getting lots of council seats up and down the country under the Blair government. and the campaigns against the English Defence League. And then he went on to support the establishment of Stand Up to Racism. He spoke at the very first demonstration marking UN Anti-Racism Day in 2014. He supported campaigns against Tommy Robinson and its far-right and fascist demonstrations at the time. And when he became leader of the Labour Party, the first thing he did was address the 100,000-strong demonstration calling for Syrian refugees and other refugees to be welcomed here. And he supported progressive policies to support the right to asylum, and he's consistently defended the right to seek asylum and refugee rights. He's been very passionate about that. And I'd also like to mention I've got here a copy of the 2019 For the Many, Not the Few manifesto. And I just want to read out a couple of excerpts on opposing racism. So it says, this is under the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn. The Labour Party is the party of equality. We seek to build a society free from all forms of racism, anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. We should all be deeply troubled by the rise in racially aggravated attacks and race hate crime in the past year. Anti-Semitic incidents are also on the rise once more, and we are committed to combating this trend with adequate resources and firm political will. It goes on to say, we will end racism and discrimination against Gypsy, Roma, traveller communities and protect the right to lead a nomadic way of life. Black and Asian workers still suffer a massive pay gap. By introducing equal pay audit requirements on large employers, Labour will close this pay gap. So what does that tell you? What does all of what I've just said illustrate? That Jeremy Corbyn is a principled anti-racist. And there has never been, and unfortunately I hope there will be, but there probably will never be a more anti-racist leader of the Labour Party than Jeremy Corbyn. So I salute Jeremy Corbyn, and I thank Jeremy Corbyn for all of his work, for standing up to racism and standing up to fascism. So long may that work continue, and thank you all, and I hope you too will join the campaign against racism and support Stand Up to Racism. Thank you. Have a good day.
Round of applause for Sabi Dalu. Our next speaker it needs no introduction again. It's Kate Hudson from CND.
Thanks very much indeed, Chris. Been great to see you all here, and what a great lot of speeches I've been hearing. I was particularly appreciative of what Audrey was saying about standing up for peace, and not surprising that that's going to be my theme now. But I want to just start off by congratulating Jeremy on 40 years as an MP. And what does that actually mean? That means that for 40 years in Parliament, we've had a man of absolutely extraordinary principle standing up on every single issue that you could possibly need. And so, for example, when it's come to peace, justice, human rights, nuclear disarmament, Jeremy Corbyn has been there. And for us, in the campaigns and in the movements, that has been the best help you could possibly ask for anybody. So really a big thank you today to Jeremy for all that he's done over those 4 decades. Because we know with Jeremy, it's not just fine words, it's not flowery rhetoric, it's actually practically doing stuff. You know, Jeremy is just a man of action. He's out there, he goes to see people, he gives people practical support, whatever they need, Jeremy is able to provide that. And so much hard work. I mean, that is a man who does several meetings every day. I'm pretty sure he really enjoys it. But nevertheless, how amazing that he is able to do that. He's really a force of nature. And as well as those 40 years as an MP, for the last 20, he's been in the leadership of CND, the leadership of the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. And not just as a figurehead. Yes, okay, since he was leader, he's been a vice president, but before that, he was a vice chair of CND, and that is a really hands-on position. So he was there working with us at every challenge that we were facing. And just a couple of those, quickly. In 2007, you may remember Tony Blair in government trying to push the replacement of the Trident nuclear weapons system through Parliament. What did Jeremy do? Worked with us, gave leadership, pulled people together. OK, we didn't win because Blair depended on the Tory vote, but he was able with us to organise, I think it was the second biggest backbench rebellion during the whole of the Blair Prime Ministership. You know, really, really effective and standing up for principle and winning so many people, so many Labour MPs to his side. And then, of course, we all know we've all been involved in it. Some of you look as though you're old enough to have been on the big demonstration in 2003. You know, Jeremy Corbyn is one of the key leaders of the Stop the War Coalition, the anti-war movement, throughout that whole period. So continuous work against war, whether it's been Iraq, Syria, Libya, Yemen, Palestine, you know, Jeremy is there doing it. And I just want to say something about one of the things I really value most about Jeremy, and that is his understanding of the big picture. I know he's a fantastic constituency MP, but he's not in any sense parochial in his vision. He really understands what is going on in the world. It's a really full world vision. Just think about his work, for example, for the Chagos Islanders. You know, how many MPs really understand that the British government was responsible for forcibly deporting all these people from their homes in the Chagos Islands so the Americans could have the Diego Garcia base there? No, Jeremy Corbyn on the case. And I believe when he first met President Obama, it was one of the things that he raised with him there. So, you know, really putting his efforts and hard work into that. And we know that the values of Jeremy Corbyn, the values of peace and socialism, are the values of our movement. You know, when I first went on demonstrations some decades ago, all the banners, they would all have peace and socialism. That's what you would have on those banners. That's what Jeremy stands for. But it seems to me some people are just dropping that piece off the agenda. You know, the commitment of our Labour movement, our progressive movement, they're dropping the peace demand. And I think together with Jeremy, we have to reverse that situation. And one final example on this. Last year at the TUC, some of you will have been there. You may remember that there was a very narrow victory for a composite resolution which committed the TUC not only to supporting Trident replacement, but also to dumping the defence diversification policy and supporting massively increased military spending. In fact, you have the situation now where the TUC is actually in favour of more military spending than our government. Now, I say we have to get on board with Jeremy Corbyn, with the peace movement and the anti-war movement, and we need to reverse that, and we need to put peace back front and centre on our banners, on our slogans and in our action. Thank you very much.
A round of applause for Kate Hudson. Right, we've got one of my favourite comedians that I've worked with many times all over the country. He's agreed to come and do 10 minutes. He normally does much longer than that, so I'm going to have to try and get rid of him at 10 minutes. If you can help me, that might be useful. Please make some noise for Patrick Monaghan.
Hang on 1 second. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start, can we give it up for Crispin? Crispin, come here, give it up for Crispin. It was done. Oh, yeah, he can't go back up the stairs. Listen, I have, Crispin said, will you come and do it, come and have a chat? I said, yeah, of course I'll do it, because he's done such an amazing job, and not just with Jeremy Corbyn, but Crispin, both, you don't need me to tell you this, for 40 years, Corbyn's been fighting hard, but Crispin has been putting on shows like this for 40 years, hasn't he? Come on, people, 40 years like this. You're such a young crowd, but you won't know this. Me and Crispin first started doing stand-up back in 1963, when all of this... When this was just Fields. Look at it now. Look at it now. He said, will you come and do the show? I said, yeah, of course I will. And I didn't realise it would be such a young crowd. It looks like this is like the prequel to Woodstock. Look at you people. This is so beautiful. I can smell the money in this place. It is. And this was the thing. What Crispin did was he would go around, he did the stand-up for Labour. Do you remember that? There'll be loads of people, I recognise the faces, there's Tosh, there's people here that we know. Crispin not only went to Labour strongholds like this is why you can do it here, but do you remember you went to Tory places? He took us to Richmond, took us to Chipping Norton, we went to Kingston, like real proper Tory places, and we had to do the stand-up for Labour, and it was hilarious. There was people there like Boris throwing Death Stars like there were peers, just at people like this, and you try to get in to do the gig. And do you remember in Richmond where it wasn't like you lovely people, half of the room was full of Tories who pretended to be Labour supporters, and you could spot them a mile off because they had the horses and the riding gear on, and they sat there, weren't they? And we thought, and then when the pandemic hit about 2 years, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we couldn't do the live shows anymore, and then Crispin, instead of giving up, what did Crispin do? He put it onto Zoom. How many people here are from the Zoom? Just cheer if you've been on. Look at this. Look at you people. Look at you people. People would look at us. There's young people in this park, Gen Z, people under the age of 26 would look at us lot and think, there's no way one of us has got a laptop in this secluded section. There's young people walking around now going, what's going on there? It looks like a convention. This looks like where it's a drop-in centre for the COVID vaccines. This is what it looks like. The young people outside there, don't go in here, they've had 11 jabs, each of these, 2 shots of AstraZeneca, 3 shots of Pfizer, 5 shots of MDMAs. They're all off the tits. Look at them. Buzzing it. And this was the thing. Crispin, I had to take my hat off to him because not only Crispin and Jeremy, they did the thing, he did the Zoom. Nobody even knew what Zoom was, did we? We didn't know what Zoom was. And he kept it going during the lockdown. And all of you there that will remember him, some of you won't know him, he didn't just turn up to Zoom, he went and got a red shiny jacket that was last worn by Larry Grayson in 1978. And he got that from the V&A Museum, didn't you, Crispin? And he did that, he did the Zoom, didn't he? He did it twice a week, and he built up an amazing audience. It was 400 or 500 people. And then I remember when Jeremy came on, do you remember you got Jeremy on the Zoom? 50,000 people turned up, more people turned up to the Zoom than they did for Live Aid. That's what it was like. Look, this guy's running over to get a picture with Crispin. He's over there. Quick, go on. Wants a selfie with him. And then after that, when we came out of lockdown, some of you, we all met each other. Do you remember in Hastings where Crispin? Do you remember that where Crispin took the trailer? This same trailer went to Hastings. Today it's here. Obviously, this trailer, if you could, it is a fundraiser. They try. Look at my guy here, keeping an eye on this trailer. Look at the security guarding the trailer. This trailer, mate, is not going to get nicked unless. Look at these guys. Do you think they're going to run at you and take this trailer? I love you. No, I'm joking. Come on, come back in. You're all right. He's doing a great job keeping an eye on it. And this was the thing, wasn't it, Crispin? He went out and he didn't stop. Crispin and Jeremy haven't stopped. They keep fighting for the cause. You keep going out, you keep putting the shows on, you do all sorts of things. And I'll tell you 2 minutes very quickly before I wrap up, and why it's so important for me, because look, when we grew up, I'm the same as everyone here, we've all got our own stories, and you know what you've got to do, you've got to stand up. For mine, it was a case of like when we were kids, you look at what's happening now with Priti Patel and Suella Braverman. When we were kids, I was born in a place called in Avos, which is in Iran. Now that's where our story started originally. We're from Iran. Now some of the kids, some of you are very young here, you won't know this, some people won't know where Iran is. Iran is near Bradford. And that's where we first came from over there. And and in Iran where we lived in as kids, my mum's from, I was in the actual area, but in that area, it's a small town that's made up of a third of them are Arabs, a third are Iranians, Persians, and a third are Armenians. And in that area, there was one Irish fella. And that Irish fella, was my dad, right? That's the only fella there. And it was hilarious because Iranians, Middle Eastern people, are the same as the UK people, very warm welcome. And Middle Eastern women, they love Irish men. You know, my dad's one of them chatty fellas, you know, be walking around going, hello there, how you doing? You been all right? Yeah, fantastic. And then my mum, like the Middle Eastern women, go, oh, look at him, look at him, look at the way he melts in the sun. Look at his freckles. Please, bring him in the house, give him food, give him food. So me dad and me mum, this is genuinely true, when they met, they had the kids in Iran. And then when we came, they travelled around the world looking for work. Exactly the same as what many families have been doing now over the last few years. The same as this year. What happens? Iran became a war zone where we lived. That was Iran and Iraq were at war. And then they went to different places. And my dad worked at the steelworks in Teesside in the northeast of England. And that's where we settled. And it was brilliant. But my mum and dad are from that background where they're old school. They don't have what we've got now. They couldn't do Zoom. They don't even have a smartphone. They don't mean. Dad left school at the age of 12. Can't read or write. But he's good with his hands. He'd be walking around here, he'd be picking up stuff like this. He'd go, Jesus, Patrick, would you feel the weight on that? Would you feel the weight? It's not too bad. I'll tell you now, there'll be about 18 kilo in there. Sure, that'll be all right. Bit of lead. Sure, aluminium in the clip. That'll be all right. Patrick, would you talk to these lovely people here while I go and put this on the van? Right, you know? My dad would take this van. He'd love it. And when I grew up, people were like this saying to me, this is genuinely true, people would say to me, they say, look, how can your mum and dad not have a mobile phone? Why do they not have a Zoom? Why do they not come on these Zooms? Why do they not come and connect, write stuff on the internet? I said, my mum and dad can't read or write English. Not everyone has that luxury. You know, you're living in a generation now where education should be free for people. People should learn like this. But that generation, the baby boomers, were strong. You know, people travel from different places. My mum and dad, people would say to me, look, you've got to teach them. You've got to teach your mum, your dad, how to use a phone, how to get on the internet, get onto Zoom, start writing stuff. And so I said, okay. I went to my dad, I said to my dad, I said, listen, I'm going to get you a mobile phone, we're going to get you an iPhone, so you can start messaging people, you can start using it. My dad's like, it'll be no good to me, sure. I can't write, I wouldn't be able to know what to do with the thing. I said, Dad, you don't need to be able to write. The iPhone has got a thing called Siri. You press the microphone, you speak into it, it writes the messages for you, and you just send it. So I give the phone to my dad. My dad's like this. He goes, hello there, Siri, how are you doing there? So I've been looking for aluminium, been driving around in the van. Have you seen any bits and pieces? I've been looking for some. I said, hold on now, Dad. I said, hold on. What you got to do is you got to breathe and use words. That's what Siri's looking for. And my dad was loving it. He just started using the phone going, anyway, so I was saying to Michael, you know, when I was coming across Siri, you wouldn't believe it. I seen him on the roof. I said, it'd be fantastic. After 5 minutes, Siri said, are you looking for a jockey? Right, that's what it came up. That's the only thing. And then I tried to give the phone to my mum, right? I tried to teach my mum. Now, my mum, she could speak a little bit of English now, but when we were growing up, her first language was Arabic, because my grandparents are Arabs, but her second language, Farsi Iranian, which she would speak to us in Iranian. And so when my mates would come round from school in the northeast, I said to them, listen, I said, my mum's not being rude, it's just that she can't really speak very good English. But they would still chat, my mates would come round, and my mum, the only English she'd learnt at the time was from adverts, from TV. She'd watch TV, she'd pick up phrases, and she'd use them. So my mates would come from school and they'd go, oh, hello, Mrs. Monahan, you all right? You good? How's things? And my mum would go, Salam, holi khubiya, chitori? Nah, alhamdulillah, chitori migam. Hands do dishes, soft for skin. Vile cream, very liquid. And then she'd walk off. And my mates are looking at me going, is everything all right? I said, yeah, it's just having a chat. And then she'd come back in and she'd go, I can't believe it's not butter. And then she'd leave again. And then this was the problem, last thing, this was the problem. My mate said, give your mum the iPhone, teach her how to use an iPhone, she can come on the Zoom, the Stand Up for Labour, she can use stuff. I said, you can't give my mum an iPhone, my mum's got a Middle Eastern accent. The Siri doesn't work on an iPhone. If you've got a Middle Eastern accent, the only thing that Siri will call, right, on an iPhone is MI5. That's all it does. If you use it, Yellow, alhamdulillah, chitori khubasti, woo, 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 woo. Mum, get in the basement, what have you done? Listen, people, thank you very much for supporting here today. Thank you for your love for Jeremy. Thank you for your love for Crispin. Keep it strong. And at the end of the show, we're going to crowd surf, and one lucky person will win the raffle ticket to take this home. That is the promise that Crispin's. Thank you, fella. Cheers. Thank you, Crispin. Cheers, guys.
I actually got him to do 10 minutes. Patrick Monaghan. Right, we've got some more music now. We've got a guitarist, singer-guitarist, Charles Bueller. Round of applause. While he's not quite here, apparently we've raised £750 for Jeremy's legal fund. So, a round of applause for everyone.
This fellow was a little bit shorter than me, I think, that came out before. How's everyone doing? All right? Yeah. Excellent. Lovely to see you all here. What a lovely day for it. My name's Charles Bueller. I'm from Southampton. Travelled up today on the train. Lovely weather to be on a train and 1,000 tubes. I'm going to start with this song now. I wrote about a cemetery back home. The song's called Hollybrook Cemetery. Thank you. Fuck me, top me up and throw away the key. I'm running late to an early grave at the Hollybrook Cemetery. But first I'll dirty my knees, pull my trousers down and piss in the breeze. The cat's gone away, so the mouse misbehaves, running on nervous energy. Morning sex with you, screamy beautiful, please. Make out time a nuisance, make love, make excuses and leave. Cuff me, call me cruelty, then make me say cheese. I'm one laughing, crying face away from the Hollybrook Cemetery. But first I'll get grit in my teeth. Get "Here lies a liar" scratched in the concrete. Life got the best of all my little deaths. Flesh obsessional jealousies. And all I ever gave you is all I'll ever be. Make out time a nuisance, make love, make excuses and leave. The comedy exit for Benny and me is life at full speed. Ring out morbid applause, black confetti for Benny and me. Is life at full speed? When you're running late to an grave at the Hollybrook Cemetery. But first I'll dirty my knees. But first I'll dirty my knees. But first I'll dirty my knees. Thank you. Might have been a little bit different. I don't really know. I wasn't sure what to expect. You probably weren't sure what to expect either. These are fairly apolitical songs. I was going to write like an anti-Tory song, but I didn't want to get kicked out of the Labour Party. Do you know what I mean? So, thank you very much. This next song is a song called Dream. I pester what I can't have till it wants me right back. A telly with my face on hits the ground, but this video has no sound. I've never prayed before and I won't start now. Just kill me alright, just don't let my phone die. And somebody turn the smoke alarms down. I need flattery and decoys, good weed and green noise. Do you dream of me? 'Cause I dream. And half these nights it's like you're ghost writing mine for me. And I'm living out my undeleted scenes tonight. Matthew, I'm gonna be flaunting my insecurities. I took our waning faith and threw it under the bus, 'cause I thought some godless living would work some wonders for us. But he had other ideas, my love. Yeah, he had other ideas, my love. How can he sit me here, just the six of us? That's me and my bad mood, a demon or two, the loneliness and the tinnitus. The key left my ears ringing in. The key left my ears ringing in. The key left my ears ringing in. Do you dream of me? 'Cause I dream. And half these nights is like you're ghost writing mine for me. And I'm living out my own deleted scenes tonight. Matthew, I'm gonna be flaunting my vulnerabilities. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Thank you very much. Is this me? Kill one more? Sweet. Excellent. I'm going to do one more for you now, then I'm going to leave you to your lovely afternoon. I think it's a great cause that everyone's here. Like, I'm not as driven perhaps as former speakers, but I think you're all doing the right thing, you know, if that's any consolation. This song is a song I wrote about my friend Tall Handsome James. Thank you very much. So I've been Charles Bueller, and yeah, cheers.
Oh no, I'm sick of playing all of these games. Oh Lord, oh my Lord, why can't you make me like tall handsome James? Thinking back to the times that he sat through my cocaine serenades, the mist on Moonrise Kingdom in the rain. I know a doctor who nurses a vodka and coke like an animal caged. Baby oil royals in his brain, in his brain. Oh no, oh no, I'm sick of playing all of these games. Oh Lord, my sickly sweet Lord, can't you make me like tall handsome James? Kissing, singing Elvis in Pinner at the party when the Stingrays played. The martini glass dance and our fake dismay. I'm either rushing, falling in love, or there was something in the MDMA. Baby oil royals in my brain, over and over again. Oh no, oh no, I'm moving in unsavory ways. Oh Lord, my sickly sweet Lord, can't you make me like tall handsome James? James, did I mention that my world went up in flames? A kind of moonlight as myself these days. Oh no, oh fuck no, I'm sick of playing all of these games. Oh Lord, oh my sweet Lord, why can't you make me like tall handsome James? Oh no, oh no, I'm moving in unsavory ways. Oh Lord, my sickly sweet Lord, can't you make me like tall handsome James?
Thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. I've been Charles Bueller. Cheers.
A round of applause for Charles Bueller. Right, our next speaker is a legend in the comedy world. Started up alternative comedy, and he's come here especially today. Please make lots of noise for Alexei Sayle.
Hi, good afternoon. I am going to keep this short. I think obviously that Jeremy was one of the finest people in the world. We do something about that feedback. And, what is that? Yeah, no, fuck it anyway. Do it anyway. Obviously we know that the current incumbent of Jeremy's position is not as decent a human being, so I am going to just read a poem that I did recently on the radio, and this is called I Hate Keir Starmer. I hate Keir Starmer. I hate him aesthetically. I hate his fussy little too perfect, just shy of Nazi officer haircut. I hate his Prime Minister from central casting face, which initially seemed designed by committee, but increasingly suffers from having an expression slapped on it, like he's desperately trying to explain away his role in a sex scandal at the dog pound he runs. I hate his pedantic voice, which makes everything he says sound like an HR meeting you don't really need to be at. Starmer is a small man, physically short, yes, but that's not really notable, except as a symbol of the immense spiritual shortness that it signifies. He is aesthetically petty and dull, a piece of hotel art made man. I hate Keir Starmer. I hate him ethically. I hate the way that Starmer poses as an honest man, then casually breaks every pledge he made to the Labour membership before they elected him leader. A fucking bastard. I hate that he's a liar and that he's not even good at it. Plainly what he is good at is being a coward. I hate Keir Starmer because what we all need is the possibility of actually doing something. Concrete action that might actually make the world a better place. And Keir Starmer is a fatberg blocking this possibility. I hate Keir Starmer. Like a malfunctioning bus stop sign that keeps telling me my bus is about to show up, but it never does. I hate Keir Starmer because he is being imposed on me, whether I like it or not. He only seemed barely mediocre when he was up against Liz Truss, a blustering idiot who seemed to have gotten lost on the way to a filming a series, The Apprentice, and accidentally ended up being appointed Prime Minister. And Starmer will not go away unless he loses the next election. But even if he did, he'd be replaced once suspects his wing of the Labour Party will conspire to put Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting in charge instead. Someone who looks like Starmer's son, who he made out of margarine. I hate Keir Starmer, but I don't want to hate Keir Starmer. What we need, is a world in which nobody hates him, because nobody has to think about him at all.
Round of applause for Alexei Sayle. Now, I'm really delighted that the next speaker's come. She's a fantastic example to everyone, an anti-racist campaigner throughout her life, who has unfortunately, like many of us, been branded racist. Can I just introduce Diana Nesland?
And thank you for a wonderful day and a wonderful celebration of the best MP I've ever known, and I'm sure anyone else has known. I'm truly, truly honoured to talk about my experience with Jeremy, and it will tell you something of the man that I knew over many, many years, even longer than 40 years. Jeremy and I go back a long way. Both of us were anti-apartheid, were in the anti-apartheid movement. Me, because I had lived through apartheid and wanted passionately to see one person, one vote, in a free and equal South African in a free and equal South African, thanks Crispin, free and equal South African society. Jeremy, because he recognised injustice then as now, and was prepared to put his freedom on the line for those without. It was a long uphill struggle, and there seemed to be no light at the end of the tunnel. Reagan and Thatcher were the cheerleaders for apartheid and called Nelson Mandela a terrorist. Later on, Thatcher was only too pleased to be photographed with him. They were heavily invested in that regime, but then the foundations eroded. Mandela was free, and a new South Africa was born. Jeremy was always a sterling supporter of the campaign. As the old photo shows, he put himself on the line, totally dependable. I was but a foot soldier, but we shared that passion. I know Jeremy by reputation as part of the larger movement, but did not have any personal contact with him then. It was through the Palestine campaign that I met and came so much to value Jeremy. I was a white South African and resented being privileged as a white person in South Africa. I am a Jew, an international Jew. I resent being privileged as a Jew, allowed to go to Israel while the Palestinians are prevented. So that is why I had to join that campaign. Jeremy campaigning for Palestine meant bringing the plight of the Palestinian people to a larger public and to the legislature so that action could be taken to challenge Israel's subjugation of the Palestinian people. We needed parliamentary support. Sometimes we needed a room, sometimes we needed a speaker, sometimes we needed questions to be asked or an early day motion. Jeremy was always our go-to person, and he never disappointed. He was not the only advocate for Palestine in the Labour Party, but he was the one who would do the difficult tasks, the ones that could result in unwarranted publicity, like support for Remi Capo, the Palestinian leader who was under threat of deportation at the instigation of the Israeli state. Jeremy never hesitated to stand on a platform in support of Remi Capo, as did I. Little did we know that the support would one day come back to haunt him. Jeremy never stood on ceremony. He was always the easiest MP to approach and stood in stark contrast with so many others. He could be our stand-bearer, and miraculously in 2015, that is what he became, a beacon of light that inspired so many, including myself, to rejoin the party. There was then a ferment of ideas, a belief in our capacity to change and the possibility of a viable future in this country, enthralled to austerity that corrupted the spirit. Jeremy was a leader of a movement that allowed us to dream. But it was not to be. The 2017 election showed what was possible, but those in power decided that they would not stand for it. And one of the best, kindest, boldest and most fervent anti-racist politicians that most of us has ever known was targeted as an existential danger. The weapon that was most successful was that of anti-Semitism. Because, believe me, there is not a bone of anti-Semitism in Jeremy's body. It was always about support for Israel. It is abundantly clear that all parties, particularly the Tory party, hold members with anti-Semitic views. But it is clear too that these are always forgiven as long as the person pledges fealty to Israel. The foreign policy elite need a country in the Middle East complying with Western interests and a model for the surveillance state, while the Jewish establishments have too much invested in Israel to tolerate a leader that would hold the country, now recognized as an apartheid state, to account. It was a portent of things to come after the high water mark of the 2017 election. The attacks grew exponential, and they must have taken a terrible toll on Jeremy. Jeremy resigned. Starmer took over. Jeremy resigned in 2019. Starmer took over on the basis of a false prospectus and has managed to hollow out the party to become merely a stage army for a new liberal authoritarian regime which bears little or no resemblance to anything like democracy, never mind a left-wing socialist party. They won the battle, they defeated Jeremy, and what have they achieved? A wasteland. The public realm is in crisis. Poverty and vulnerability stalk the land, while the climate emergency provokes such existential anxiety that people fear to bring children into the world. Starmer's party has nothing to offer and inspires no trust. But the hope that Jeremy instilled into all of us will not die. The politicians of today are the past, and if we allow them to continue on their path to perdition, our future will be mortgaged. Enthralled to bankers and corporate power, they offer us no solution to the daunting problems we face. The people of Islington North and the people of this country need Jeremy to continue to champion a future for ourselves, for our children, for our grandchildren. And finally, I want to say, for those who may feel despair, when I first came to this land in 1960, I believed I would never live to see a free South Africa. We saw it, we can do it, let's get on with it. Thank you.
A round of applause, please, for Diana Neslin. Our next speaker is a representative of Socialist Labour Network, who have sponsored this event, and his father was an MP for the Labour Party. It's a very interesting story. Please make lots of noise for Roger Silverman.
Okay, this is a marvellous event. Nice to see you all, comrades. Greetings from Socialist Labour Network and also from Newham Socialist Labour. Jeremy, Congratulations on your lifelong struggle for the cause of socialism, and all the more so for the 40 years you fought on the most difficult of all battlefields, Parliament. Now, I know something of the appalling pressures you must have felt, because my father, Sidney Silverman, was a Left Labour MP for 33 years until his dying day. And he received just the same treatment from his so-called allies as you. He too had the whip withdrawn, not once, but twice. Once by Attlee, once by Gaitskell. And he only avoided the same fate yet again under Wilson by dying just in time. In 1951, he was expelled from the Parliamentary Labour Party for opposing the Labour government's pro-NATO rearmament programme. In 1961, he had the whip withdrawn again for voting in line with Labour's conference votes in favour of nuclear disarmament and for calling on Gaitskell, the Starmer of his day, to resign as party leader. Finally, just a year before his death, he denounced Harold Wilson, saying, "Just for 30 pieces of silver, he betrayed us." When the chief whip tried to appease him with patronising compliments, he replied, "The only memorial I would value is that I've given a lifetime of service in the Labour Party's continuing efforts to establish a socialist society." It was a fitting epitaph. He died only months later, in 1968, with that goal no nearer realisation. Now, if that's how my dad thought of Attlee, Gaitskell and Wilson, just think what he would have said about Sir Keir Starmer, the man who won the leadership, promising Jeremy to continue your radical programme, and who immediately launched a mass purge. Starmer has systematically crushed the democratic rights of the membership. Literally thousands of members have been excluded without a hearing, and many more have simply dropped out in disgust. This is not just another swing of the pendulum, it's a systematic purge. True, there have been witch hunts in every generation, but they complied with at least the trappings of due process. For instance, each one of the Liverpool councillors had the right, before their expulsion, to put their case in person before the National Executive Committee. And when the militant editorial board were expelled, Ted Grant himself was given the right to appeal directly in a 5-minute speech to the entire Labour Party conference. And now, thousands of party activists have been expelled by a mere click on the keyboard. An email, which, like one that I got, notifying them that their membership is terminated. At least in Alice in Wonderland, it's true you got the sentence first, but at least you got some kind of trial afterwards. Even Stalin felt it necessary to stage at least a show trial. The nearest parallel to justice in Starmer's Labour Party is Kafka's novel, The Trial. Most disgusting of all, Starmer has branded Britain's foremost campaigner against racism a racist. How dare he! Jeremy, history will show the truth. Your record is spotless. As a matter of fact, it was Labour's right-wing Home Secretary Herbert Morrison, Peter Mandelson's grandfather, by the way, who shut the door to Jewish refugees from the Nazi Holocaust. It was Labour's right-wing Foreign Secretary Ernest Bevin who sank the ships carrying Jewish survivors of concentration camps in the Mediterranean. And they talk about anti-Semitism? Jeremy, it's time the truth was told. You led the party in 2017 to its best ever vote, apart from Scotland. And that was in spite of sabotage from your own officials. And even in 2019, you scored a higher vote than Miliband in 2015, Brown in 2010, and even Blair in 2005 when Labour won the election. And they dare to say that Corbyn's policies were a disaster and were unpopular. Meanwhile, trade union leaders are being expelled and shadow ministers are banned from joining picket lines. Now you might say that's nothing new, but remember, in 1976, serving Labour cabinet ministers stood on the Grunwick's picket line, including even Shirley Williams, who soon afterwards defected to the Social Democratic Party. That's how far Labour has degenerated since those days. So how do we overcome the duopoly of the twin-headed Tory-Starmerite dictatorship? In just the same way that Labour displaced the Tory Liberal regime over a century ago. In 1900, the trade unions severed their link with the Liberal Party and established the Labour Representation Committee. It's time they did the same today. The only difference today is that David Lloyd George was incomparably more radical than Sir Keir Starmer. So if there was ever a need for a genuine party of Labour, it's now. And Jeremy, you're the comrade to lead it.
A round of applause for Roger Silverman. Our next speaker has come all the way down from South Yorkshire to be here. He drives a bike. Do you know who I might be thinking about? Can you get it? Tosh McDonald.
Thanks, Crispin. And you know, I'm retired now, so I don't have to set an alarm clock. But today, because I was coming here and I needed a train, I had to set my alarm clock. And instead of setting an hour earlier, so I could eat Thatcher for an extra hour, I set it 2 hours earlier. So I could eat Thatcher and I could eat Starmer for an hour before I came down here. Now, it's not all bad about Starmer. I've heard a lot of people accusing him of being untruthful here. Well, I know he has told the truth at least once, when he said his dad was a tool maker, because his dad certainly made one tool. Now, I also think, I want to speak about Jeremy, obviously, and my love for him, but I also think somebody needs to say about the guy who organises this. He's never ending, it's tireless. Crispin Flintoff. I think the work he does is fantastic. Now, I first became aware of Jeremy Corbyn in the 80s when I was involved in the anti-apartheid movement. And isn't it funny how that keeps coming up today? Because many of us are the same people involved in the same campaigns throughout history. I have never known a more decent or honest man than Jeremy Corbyn. And the way he was treated was awful. Now, retired now, I had the honour of serving as the president of ASLEF. And I just want to tell you about 2 executive committee meetings that I chaired. In 2015, when Labour was looking for a new leader, we chaired the first one and we had to look for a candidate to support for Mayor of London, 1 for deputy leader and 1 for leader. Now, ASLEF's usually right. We went for Sadiq Khan as Mayor of London. We went for Tom Watson as deputy leader. We're usually right. And we looked at the candidates at that time for leader at Labour Party, and Jeremy wasn't in the race then. And we looked and we debated about the room, and we couldn't nominate any of them. Not one of them was up to scratch. And when a national trade union can't nominate any of the candidates for leader of the Labour Party, an affiliated trade union, something's wrong. Then Jeremy Corbyn threw his hat in the ring late on. We had a special executive committee meeting and it was the fastest one I ever chaired. It was moved and seconded that ASLEF nominate Jeremy Corbyn for leader of the Labour Party, and it was carried unanimously. The hammer was down and we were in the pub quicker than any executive committee meeting I'd ever been part of, and that's quite a record to beat. 2015, 2017, we had a manifesto. That was fantastic. It was our generation's 1945 moment. The National Health Service that was built by the victory in 45 could have been repaired in 2017. We could have done it. We could have built council houses again. Student debts could have been washed away, got rid of. And it didn't happen because people in the parliamentary party worked against Jeremy Corbyn. Do you remember, I'll never forget it, when the debate on airstrikes in Syria was taking place? Do you remember Hilary Benn standing up and making that speech and getting a standing ovation from the Tory front bench? Do you remember that? Yeah. Well, if you don't remember it, that's good for you, because I still have nightmares about it. And then the chicken coup took place, where they tried to get rid of Jeremy Corbyn. And I spoke outside Parliament that day, when the coup was taking place inside. And I said something. I said, when Corbyn stood, we filled clubs, I spoke in the trades club with Jeremy. I had to speak in one room while he spoke to another filled room. We did it at the Crucible in Sheffield, where the snooker tournament. And we filled it. And Jeremy had to speak to a crowd outside while I kept them going inside. It was massive. And I said on that day outside Parliament, if they run this coup against him, and he has to run again in another leadership election, we won't need big places like the Crucible. We'll need football stadiums. And we did. Young people got involved in politics for generations. I'd seen people telling us, the young ones today, they're not interested. You give them something like Jeremy did, and they're interested. They're far more interested than us. Now, I am concerned about Parliament in Britain. I look with maybe a dozen exceptions, or a dozen decent MPs in Parliament, I reckon. Ian Lavery's still trying to work out who the 11th and 12th one is, because I spoke to him the other week. And I'll tell you what, when you look at what they're doing, and you look at them sitting on their hands, agreeing with the Tories over and over again, bailing the Tories out over and over again, they're not doing the job they're elected to do. But I'll tell you who are doing it. The trade unions, workers are taking action, whether it's on the railways, in the NHS, barristers. People are taking action everywhere. The trouble is you can't try and mention them all because you'll miss one. But not just the workers and the trade unions taking industrial action. There's also people in community groups getting organised, whether it's for food banks, whether it's against rent, whether it's against the landlords. People are organising, they're leaving Parliament behind. People are getting interested. Now we're going to have an election within a year. The way things are happening, it might come even sooner. But what we have to do is to be organised, not stand socialist against socialist. Make sure if there's a socialist candidate standing, we don't stand another one. And I don't care which party they're in. It could be in the Labour Party. It could be in one of the other socialist parties. It could be tough. For socialist candidates standing, we stand one. And I hope in many places, I wish that would be Labour Party members in their candidates. Now one thing I just want to finish on about Jeremy, because I love him to bits. I really do. And one thing I'll say about it's been touched on. The thing he's done for all my working life, all the time I've known him, he's been involved in Stop the War. Now I know a little bit about how horrible wars can be. I've had the honour of speaking on battlefields, on anniversaries of the Spanish Civil War battles. I was brought up by a grandfather, born in 1907. His younger brother, born later. My grandfather was a miner, so never went to war in the Second World War. His younger brother, John, did. He was captured, he was put on a merchant ship. It would become what they call an armed merchantman. He was captured by the Japanese, and I always knew there was something different about him. I always knew as a prisoner of war, bad things happened to him. When I was 16, I got my first legal motorbike. I'd had a British BSA Bantam prior to that. When I was 16, Motorcyclists will know what an FS1 is, the Yamaha Physic, with a sports moped, 16-year-olds could ride. I got one, I was so proud of it. And when I showed him it, the tirade that came on me from him and his time as a prisoner of war in Japan, and the things they did to him, I found out the reason he never had kids, although he had a wonderful, loving wife, was because they did things to him that stopped him having kids. There was no anaesthetic. I also know from the wonderful man who was also a previous president of ASLEF called Bill Ronsley. I went round the Soviet Union with him in 1988, spoke to people who fought against fascism there. I know some of the things that were done. And he also introduced me to a man called Emile Renou, who was the assistant station manager at Cannes Station in the south of France, part of the French resistance against fascism. And he told me about things that were done to their people and things they did as well. Now what war does, it dehumanises you. And every war that takes place, every war taking place now, war crimes will be being committed on both sides. It's only the losers who ever get taken to task over it. There's got to be a better way than killing people. There's got to be a better way than putting people through what my great uncle John went through. There's got to be a better way. So let's remember, let's take a leaf out of Jeremy's book and let's work for peace and justice. We have people starving here. We have people homeless. We find billions to keep a war going. We find nothing to put towards ending a war. Let's have peace. Let's have justice. And let's keep Jeremy Corbyn in Parliament. Thank you, comrades.
Round of applause for Tosh McDonald. Right, our next speaker is a community activist around the Grenfell area. A round of applause for Moyra Samuels.
Greetings everyone, and thank you so much to Crispin for inviting me to speak at this celebration of Jeremy Corbyn's 40 years of service. On Wednesday, the 14th of June, it'll be 72 months when we lost 72 plus residents, neighbours, loved ones from the social murder. And we will, on next Wednesday, be remembering those 72 plus people. So this is a particularly difficult time for the North Kensington community. But I want to speak, obviously, about Jeremy. And I got to know of Jeremy before Grenfell. I got to know Jeremy when a number of us were in a convoy. I was in a convoy with a number of my colleagues from a school I was teaching at, where we were going to Calais to take donations for the refugee. And Jeremy was there at 8 o'clock in the morning to see us off. And yes, I had seen the images of Jeremy fighting against apartheid, and as a South African that should have alerted me to him. But what I did see was a man who showed an enormous commitment to defend the rights of refugees. A man who was prepared to fight against racism, and I've seen on every campaign that I've been involved in, Jeremy has been there, a stalwart anti-racist campaigner. And so to anyone, I would say to anyone who dares to call Jeremy an anti-Semite, you can go on, because we don't believe that. And I think about Jeremy with regard to the Grenfell atrocity. I remember, hooray, that miscreant Boris Johnson has left the building. Hooray! Because when I think of the man who actually was prepared to cut services to the fire, services that would have actually helped and supported in the rescuing of residents from that fire. When I think of Johnson, and you see what he did after, during the pandemic, his lack of care, the fact that he's partly responsible for the high number of deaths we had in COVID. And I'm comparing to Jeremy Corbyn. And when I compare him to Jeremy Corbyn, I think of after the Grenfell Tower fire, when Theresa May came to the area rather quietly. She came in and she was surrounded by a group of youth who shouted at her, "You are nothing but a pagan." I didn't know what pagan meant at the time, but apparently it means you're nothing but a liar. And she was driven out of our community. In contrast to that, when Jeremy Corbyn came into the community, people who didn't even know him very well hugged him and welcomed him into our community. People are able to see, in a time of crisis, who genuinely care and who are honest politicians. And at the time, in 2017, we needed hope. We needed somebody who represented a fight for better housing, a fight for equality, a fight for fairness, a fight for a better society. And Jeremy was that person. So, you know, I've seen Jeremy on a number of the silent walks. I will probably see him on the silent walk next Wednesday. He isn't a man who makes a huge fuss about his presence, but he's always there and he's always happy to talk to us. Jeremy has actually supported all the housing campaigns that we continue to fight for. Following Grenfell, I know he supported housing campaigns here in Islington. And obviously, in the light of what's happened with Grenfell, housing is a key area. The right for safe, decent, and genuinely affordable housing for our society is a fight we are going to have to take up really dramatically. And Jeremy, I know, has been there. He supported us. We've also seen, you know, an uprising in strikes. Yes, at last we have a glimmer of resistance. So I'd like to say solidarity to all the strikers. And again, we've seen Jeremy giving his absolute and uttermost support to all the strikers. So can I ask everybody here today that next Wednesday at 6 p.m. at the Notting Hill Methodist Church, we will be gathering to remember those 72 plus we lost in that atrocity. But we also will be, and our theme this year is justice. We will also be remembering that actually 6 years on, so little has changed. So much has changed, but so little has changed for our working class communities in terms of justice, equality and fairness. So I'm asking all of you to come and give us the support. We want all those responsible and implicated in the deaths of those 72 plus people to be held account in the future when there is a criminal inquiry. So please come and show us some of your love and support. And big up Jeremy.
Moyra Samuels, round of applause for Moyra Samuels. Our next act is a poet. Are you ready for some poetry? Yeah. Miss Anne the poet, here he is.
Hi everyone. Alright, I'm going to try and be quick because time's running out. But I just want to say some things before I go into my poetry. Basically, when I got here, I got speaking to one of my close comrades, Naomi Wimborn-Idrissi, and we were talking about the politics of anti-Semitism and how it's affected all of our lives. I was a Labour Party member of Harrow East EC. I got kicked out of the Labour Party because of quote-unquote anti-Semitism. But now there's a lot more work being done in regards to the politics of anti-Semitism and how to challenge these organisations that are using racism to cover for an anti-Palestinian kind of racism. So the first book I want to promote is a book by Dr. Anthony Lerman called Whatever Happened to Anti-Semitism. Please go get that book by Dr. Anthony Lerman called Whatever Happened to Anti-Semitism. There's another book by a scholar called Hill Aked. They came out with a book called Friends of Israel, The Backlash Against Palestine Solidarity. That gives you a good outline in regards to the Zionist organisations in the UK and what they do to challenge Palestine solidarity in the UK. But more recently, the journalist for Electronic Intifada, Asa Winstanley, he came out with a book called Weaponizing Anti-Semitism, How the Israel Lobby Brought Down Jeremy Corbyn. It's a very, very informative book that goes into what happened to Jeremy Corbyn in the Labour Party in regards to pro-Israel groups. I think go get those books, get yourself informed, so the next time we have another left-wing socialist leader, let's not beat our head around the bush. This anti-Semitism stuff will come back up. This time we want to be well prepared so that we do not fall for these kind of claims, and therefore our Palestinian activism is not effective. We will not stop campaigning for Palestinian rights. We are against all forms of racism, including Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and anti-Palestinian racism as well. So yeah, get those books by Dr. Anthony Lerman, Hill Aked, and Asa Winstanley. Let's get more informed and let's challenge these racist anti-Palestinian groups. All right, so I'm just going to go right into it. On the 20th of May, Jeremy Corbyn tabled an early day motion to recognise the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. This, for me, is what I've learned about Jeremy Corbyn. He has always campaigned for a better world, and in the spirit of Jeremy's EDM, I wrote a piece about a specific form of violence against women that happens in my community. And this piece is called Death Before Dishonor. So I'm just going to go straight into it. So here goes. In this case, there's no honor in being violent. No honor in unleashing feelings that refuse to stay silent. There's nothing worse than leaving your daughter more than frightened, but still, some would go beyond those limits to protect the family name. They're more than rigid. Sacrilege must remain dead and buried, and so it does under her name in the cemetery. Since she didn't heed his lecture, she wanted another guy, but he didn't let her. Forbidden love didn't create the rift. What did was death before dishonor. Instead of a happiness, what he had in mind was torture. Just wanting to make her scream led to the shock of raising a murdered teen because for a split second, he forgot what being a father means. When the little princess fell from his eyes while trying to live up to his vision is how patriarchy kept her in prison, which was why he was unwilling to listen. Ever since finding out, he wanted her married off now and not leave it till later, as the role of the wife can serve to police behavior, especially when they're still kind of young. Marriage is used to allay the irrational fear from parents of what their daughters may become. Independent, liberal, or traditionally less observant, detaching themselves from honor for someone like her, it was a burden that she carried on her shoulders, showing no sign of resistance. But anger grew at her brother, who was treated kind of different. You can say better. A form of discrimination based on gender places the issue of choice point blank at the center, praying that he would accept the guy she was seeing, just two beautiful human beings who wanted to build a dream. But no, at that moment, he forgot what being a father means when he changed her room into a crime scene, showing how gender inequality can widen even further via twisted ideologies, preserving honor through murder to justify the end with the blare of police sirens. The moral of the story: there's no honor in being violent. There's no honor in honor killing. There's no honor in murder. We challenge all forms of violence, including violence against women and all forms of violence against oppressed peoples. That's what Jeremy Corbyn stood for. That's what he stood against. He always stood against the underprivileged. That is what I've learned from Jeremy Corbyn's campaigning. We need more MPs. We need more people like Jeremy Corbyn, and we will not stop fighting until there's more people like Jeremy Corbyn. I want to send a clear message to Keir Starmer. We ain't scared of you. None of us we don't really give a damn about you. At the end of the day, we want Jeremy Corbyn. He sparked the movement. He is the movement. He is us. We are him. We will not let him go. If he goes, we go. We're campaigning for him. We will not let him go. Thank you so much.
A round of applause for Ms. and the Poet. Now we've got a treat for you now. I know you love a bit of magic. Well, we've got some magic for you. Are you ready for some magic? He's got Ian Saville here. Look, he's got his tricks here. Round of applause for Ian Saville.
Thank you, thank you. I'm going to be very quick if I can. What time is it? I've been told to do 10 minutes, and that is a sort of normal 10 minutes, not a left-wing 10 minutes, which is about 25, I understand. Right, so 10 minutes. We're going to start off with the trick with the large silk scarf, tie a knot in. This is actually the trick that I first performed many years ago for Fidel Castro. Well, he said he was Fidel Castro. But what he actually said was, if you're a magician. Anyway, never mind. Trick with a large silk scarf, tie a knot in the scarf. This knot represents the knotty problems of society. And the question is, how do we solve those knotty problems? Well, there are magic words here, and the magic words are, of course, mass action for a radical transformation of society, from a society based primarily on profit to a society based on human need. So can you all join in after 3? I will leave it entirely up to you, and then you come in with the magic words. Here we go. Not here we go, don't say that. I know people said it over and over again during the miners' strike, but it got us nowhere. So, it's mass action. I won't repeat it, that would be patronising. But who cares? Maybe I will then. So, mass action for radical transformation after 3. 1, 2, 3. Sorry, we've got a schism now. We've got various different groups getting together. I'll tell you what, I'll simplify it down to one word that you can all join in with, and that one word is solidarity. So can we all join in with solidarity after 3? 1, 2, 3. Solidarity. There we are, knotty problem solved. Thank you. Now, I decided to do something I've not done before, a little card trick. Now, you'll have seen me, maybe some of you will have seen me do stuff with Karl Marx, with a picture of Karl Marx. But apparently, under Labour Party rules, I'm not allowed to do that now. So what I've got is Derek Duck, who is approved by Keir Starmer. So it's a little card trick. You all right? Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah. You're going to do the trick? Yeah, I'm going to do the trick. Yeah. You ready? I'm almost ready. He sounds very much like Karl Marx, but it's just a coincidence. Quack, quack, quack. Right. So I do need somebody to select a card. Now, I've got here a pack of Labour Heroes cards. Crispin, I've got your Labour Heroes cards here. I don't know if they're still available. He's on the phone, so you can't tell. Are your cards still available? I'm doing a plug for them. They're not. They're all gone. So, but anyway, they are. That when he reprints them, they're wonderful. You know, they've got Michael Foot, Tony Benn, Keir Hardy, various other people. I need somebody to come and stand at the front to just choose a card. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I've not met you before, have I? I have. This is what? 20 years ago. Okay. Well, we didn't. I've met him. What's your name? Ian. Okay, that's easy to remember. So you see, cards are all different. Yeah. So what you have to do, I'm going to go through the cards, and you have to say stop at any point. Stop at any point. Okay. So now you look at the card that you've chosen. Remember what it is? Yeah, you remember what it is. He remembers what it is. Ian has remembered what it is. Now, what we're going to do, we are going to, let's see, I can't remember what we're going to do. We're going to do something with Derek the Duck. Now, Derek is going to attempt to find your card simply through scientific socialism. Can he do it? Let's have a look. You ready? Yeah. What? You want to do it blind? He's going to do it blindfolded. Amazing. Blindfolded. This is actually a metaphor for something or other. There you are. Blindfolded. Are you ready? Yeah, all ready. Right, here we go. Let's see if he can do it. He's not very good at this. Come on. He's pulled one card out. Oh, come on, get it. Yes. And the card that he's pulled out is the one with Jeremy Corbyn. Is that the right one? Oh no, it's John McDonald. You did the wrong one. You got it politically right. But wait a minute, try again. Try again. Oh. Come on. Oh, he's done it, right. There you are. Jeremy Corbyn, he's got it right. There we are. Okay. Now. Right, okay, so. Finally, having shown you Derek the Duck, he's got a long. I'm going to illustrate basic ideas about socialism using this copy of the Financial Times, and this represents the ideas about socialism. Socialism, very simple idea, isn't it? From each according to their ability, to each according to their needs, and it's wonderful. It goes back to that song, The International. The International unites the human race, and the International was the organisation set up over 100 years ago in which all these people got together, socialists from all over the world, and then they started discussing how they would bring about socialism, hoping that it would happen within a few years. Obviously, it's taken longer. And but what happened after a month or two? The whole International broke up. It split over the question of the Labour theory of value. And then there was another split, wasn't there, in 1914, when some of them decided to support the First World War. And then there was another split after that. Stalinism and all that. And then there was Trotskyism, of course, and that Trotskyists really enjoyed splitting. So they made that part of the appeal, and so they carried on splitting over and over again. And so we end up with all these little groups, one after another, working against one another. And wouldn't it be good if we could just say the magic words, mass action for a radical transformation of society, from a society based primarily on profit to a society based on human need, and then get back. Just a minute, there we are. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I see. Look at that. There's always one little group that won't go along with it, isn't there? That's where that comes from. Thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your time. And I hope we see Jeremy later.
A round of applause for Ian Saville. Right, we have a young singer-songwriter now for you, who's come all the way from Kent to get up here to perform. Please, can you make some noise for Harmony?
Hiya. So, I'm not old enough to vote yet, but when I can vote, I'd like to vote for a Labour Party that's half decent, so please get it together. I'm just going to start singing. Little boys preaching genocide in facsimile. mind of each person. Passers by, let his waste pile up upon the streets. Place of hate and of wasted fate. Oh, tensions are bubbling. One day it might break and make something out of this dying country. Nothing left here to see. Cool is dead, let the cities rot instead. All the pubs, they've been closed down, and the haciendas a flat block now. Don't know why I care, 'cause it closed before I was born. Maybe art is dead and gone in boarded up shops, lays the death of fun. Maybe life has never rotted sweet. You find hope in the past, you say, but generations of kids will turn to say, take me out of this dying country. Nothing left here to see. Cool is dead, let the cities rot instead. All the pubs, they've been closed down, and the haciendas a flat block now. Don't know why I care, 'cause it closed before I was born. Nothing's changed since the good old days. Oh, people are still angry in a Tory winter's wake, letting starve us out while they feast. Eatery or just give up now. Oh, when I leave school there's no chance I'm affording a house or to make it out of this dying country. Nothing left here to see. Cool is dead, let the cities rot instead. All the pubs, they've been closed down, and the haciendas a flat block now. Don't know why I care, 'cause it closed before I was born. England closed before I was born. I'm stuck, my memory's torn. Nostalgia's blinding, past unwinding. Maybe we never had it worked out in this dying country. Nothing left here to see. Cool is dead, let the cities rot instead. All the pubs, they've been closed down, and the haciendas a flat block now. Don't know why I care, 'cause it closed before I was born. England closed before I was born. Right, so I have 1 week left of secondary school, 30 hours in that horrible, horrible building. But I think my time at school probably would have been a lot better if my teachers were paid properly. So, this is a song about school. Build me up, then tear me down. You teach me how to clown around, sit for hours pretending that I'm listening. You teach me struggle, teach me strife, don't teach me how to live my life. Only tragic comedy is you not listening to me. Teach me numbers and straight lines in a blazer skirt and tie, uniform workers. That is what their mission is. Every generation's tried to turn things round. They won't survive, did they forget? Hope the future used to bring. So blame the kids in this societal detention. Know what this is, 'cause you're deflecting your intention. Your guilt you built an undetectable dissension of worlds I wanna see. Worlds that you take away from me. So blame the kids while you still forget to mention you chose destruction when you could have chose prevention of the end. You pretend that you had nothing night. You teach me war and how to fight. Chose destruction, now there's nothing I can do. You teach me lies, teach me deceit, and reward me when I cheat. Smoke screen and mirrors, that is what will pull me through. You make difference obsolete and teach prejudice to me. Fear what is foreign, conformity for me and you. You teach clash, you teach divide, and leave the struggling behind. One good performance, but don't care cause it won't benefit you. But my future ain't Dickensian, it's Govey, and the education system is borderline draconian. Well, I don't know, it's what I'm gonna do when I leave. Why can't you teach me something? Teach me, reach me, teach me something. Teach me something right. Why won't you teach me something? Teach me, reach me, teach me something. Teach me something right. Or you could just blame the kids in this society. Oh, detention. Know what this is, cause you're deflecting your intention. Your guilt you built an undetectable dissension of worlds I wanna see. Worlds that you take away, worlds that you break away, worlds that you take away from me.
A round of applause for Harmony. Our next speaker is the author of A Savage Culture Revisited and Reap the Forgotten Harvest, Remy Capo.
Today, we pay tribute to a man who, but for the scurrilous and surreptitious activities of a few, fidgeting in the shadows, would probably have become Prime Minister. He had a clear roadmap in his party's manifesto for the governance and economic changes required to make the United Kingdom a fairer and more equal society. In a nation like ours, that was a novel approach. Jeremy Corbyn has given 40 years of service to the constituency of Islington North and to the United Kingdom. When he said, for the many, not the few, I knew he fundamentally recognised the truth of British history, that it was the few who had virtually always governed this country for themselves and their class to share the profits. After historically depriving Britain's masses of land and property, it was the gilded few alone who sailed abroad to own plantations, ships and slaves, to conduct and share the profits from the slave trade amongst their own. It was that elite who sallied forth across the globe, colonizing foreign lands and their peoples, again for a profit to themselves, which, as we all know, continues to this day. Corbyn's simple statement, for the many, not the few, was a call to action and a catalyst for effective and new connections. He simply said that change for the many was possible. He recognized the iniquities of the class and aimed to close the abyss. By inspiring people from all generations, genders and ethnic backgrounds, he gave hope. He engaged our young in politics. For a nation like ours, that is hope. He recognized women's contribution and the many forms that their labor takes. That too is hope. He told people of different ethnicities that they are welcome and included. Again, that is hope. And he recognized that those few who have had it so good for so many centuries now needed to share it with the people. Now that is hope. Yes, Jeremy Corbyn's presence inspired change. Some people felt threatened by that. I really can't imagine why. Integrity is a very special quality. Some people find that intimidating. Jeremy has a lot of it. Against all adversity, and in spite of the hopelessness of continually being told that things couldn't be changed, his advent meant that hope for the many was possible. That's what hope looked like, and we liked it. And, perhaps most importantly, in his 40 years in politics, Jeremy Corbyn is, and has been, a very, very nice man. Thank you.
A round of applause for Remy Capo. Now, I'm just going to phone Ian Hudson and see if it works. Doesn't seem to be working. So what I'm going to do is move on to Harry Eccles. Harry Eccles from the RCN. Are you here, Harry Eccles? There he is. Harry Eccles from the RCN. A round of applause for Harry Eccles.
Hello. Thank you very much. It's so nice to be here. So my name's Harry Eccles. I'm a clinical nurse specialist in the field of addiction. I work on the South Coast, and I'm a very proud member of the Royal College of Nursing. Thank you. As you know, we're currently reballoting at the moment for a next round of strikes out of sheer desperation. Desperation because we're broken, burnt out, fed up, demoralised, and fed up of being walked all over. And I think this government, we've got to remember that 10 years ago, the government inherited the #1 healthcare service in the world. Yeah, that's fact. The NHS system, the national healthcare system, works. This government has systematically destroyed it, sold it off of every opportunity and undermined it at every opportunity, and that is why we are taking this fight back to the government and saying, enough is enough. We will not stand by and let patients, nurses, frontline workers and the public suffer as a result. So I really urge you all, if you've got your local picket lines for any NHS workers, the BMA are out next week as well. Get down and support them. If you know any nurses, get them to vote in this ballot, because it is so, so important. It's a fight for all of us. The government want people to forget that nurses and doctors are the public too. We use the NHS, our family use the NHS. Yeah? I don't know how many Tory ministers actually use the NHS. And I think at this time where we've got a government so anti the NHS, what really makes me sad as an activist, a trade unionist, a socialist and a campaigner is that there's not much support from the Labour Party. And I think what we need to remind them is that they are the party of the people who support striking workers. And it is amazing and a privilege to see some amazing MPs, our incredible Jeremy Corbyn included, who I've had the privilege of meeting, and every time it has been at a demo, a picket line, a march for the NHS, and that's where Labour politicians need to be. And actually this is testament to that, because he has stood by the public for all these years, and now the public are standing by him. So I think what we need to remember is in this, what is it? It's a confusing time, isn't it? We've got people striking, people reballoting, we've got anti-trade union laws coming in that belong to the Victorian era, anti-protest laws. We need to stand strong and stand in solidarity and remind whatever political party is listening, whatever politician is listening, that we demand and all we expect is the best from them to stand by us, the people and the workers, by our public services, and against this kind of greed and corruption that's just taken absolutely everything from us. So please get on the picket line, support all your local striking workers. Please stand by us as we try and save the NHS. This year is the NHS 75th birthday. Yeah? And it's amazing, and we should be celebrating. But then at the same time, will it see its 76th? Will it see its 77th? I always used to say that I was born in the NHS and I'll die in the NHS. Will I? We don't know that now, unless we stand by and fight for it. And the way to fight for it is to hold the governments to account, whoever they are, whether it's the corrupt politicians in the Tory government or politicians in Labour that are trying to sell it off. Let's remember, if the private sector are helping out and making money, that's not helping out, that's called profiteering. Yeah? Call it what it is. Yeah? Outsourcing. It's privatisation. We need to fight against it because it's ours and it isn't for sale. They cannot sell something that does not belong to them. So we need to stand together and we need to hold our politicians to account, hold our government to account, support our frontline workers, be that by getting down to the picket, tweeting your solidarity, whatever it can be. And yeah, stand strong because we are strong together. Yeah. Thank you all very much, and a huge round of applause to Jeremy Corbyn as well, who stood with us for all that time. So thank you.
A round of applause for Harry Eccles. Our next speaker is from Jewish Voice for Labour, which has just had its logo painted on the truck there, and you all know her. It's Naomi Wimborne-Idrissi.
Hi everybody! Wow, this has been a great occasion. Crispin's put on yet another fantastic gig, and we're all here to celebrate Jeremy, who will be addressing you shortly. Hooray! Actually, I'm not going to talk about Jeremy because we've heard all his wonderful qualities extolled during the course of the afternoon already, and one of Jeremy's fantastic characteristics is modesty. He says over and over again, this is not about me. So although this afternoon is in a way about him, what I would like to talk about is, to remind myself, the attacks that we face and how we should be turning the tables and fighting back. Because if we go away from this evening just feeling, oh my God, you know, Jeremy's been destroyed and it's all dreadful, that would be a great shame. So, okay. Well, we're facing so many attacks on so many fronts. I'll just pick out a couple. Some have already been referred to. The fact that the right to protest, the right to strike, the right to organise, the right to collective action is under threat. This is serious, comrades. This is really, really serious. There's also the question, or think about the Palestine Action people who have been challenging the Israeli arms company Elbit Systems, which has, for some extraordinary historical reason, plants around the country. Those guys, some of them are facing jail terms for their selfless, dedicated, heroic action. We've got to stand up against that sort of threat to the right to protest. Environmental activists, many of them very young, many of them very idealistic, coming into struggle for the first time. They're facing draconian measures against them. They're arrested en masse. They're dragged before the courts. We have to protest against this and find ways of rolling back the legislative attacks upon us. It's really important. We're facing attacks on freedom of expression. Now, if a democratic society means anything, it has to mean that you have the right to express views that are disliked by the people in power, and the right to express them in ways that the people in power find uncomfortable or distasteful. Otherwise, it's a meaningless right. And we've had some really serious examples of how that right is under threat. I'm wearing an armband here today. It's got little floating pigs on it. I was at Roger Waters' concert on Thursday night, and I can tell you that concert, which has been represented as if it was a sort of cesspit of hatred of Jews, was the exact opposite. It was a celebration of outrage against all forms of oppression and against anti-Semitism and against all forms of racism and discrimination. But you've all seen in the media the way Roger Waters has been treated, cancelled, or attempts to cancel him, so far unsuccessful, thank goodness. Ken Loach, a hero of our movement, somebody who is renowned throughout the world as a brilliant, he has an unparalleled body of work as an exponent of justice and resistance to oppression. As you all know, he's been expelled from the Labour Party. Not only that, the weaponisation of anti-Semitism is being deployed against Ken over and over again. In Jewish Voice for Labour, we've been extremely busy in the last few days putting out statements in support of both of these fantastic people, Roger Waters and Ken Loach. We have to really fight back against these manifestations of authoritarianism and anti-democratic developments in society. So where's the opposition? Well, I mean, we haven't got much time. Jeremy may want to talk about policy, but I mean, you know that the policies that are now being proposed by this Labour leadership, the one which destroyed and replaced Jeremy, are basically that somebody's already used the word neoliberal. So we have, if we want to be in the Labour Party, we have been told explicitly you must be pro-Israel, pro-NATO and pro-business. Well, I'm sorry, I don't think the people from the Bakers Union, whose logo is on here, who helped to found the Labour Party back in 1903, I don't think that's quite what they had in mind when they established a party to represent working people in Parliament. So, you know, we've got that problem to face, haven't we? We've got the question within the Labour Party of the use of disciplinary procedures to eject from the party that wing which gives it its motivation to do good in the world. You know, to fight for justice. I'm expelled, 3 other of my JVL comrades are expelled. We know of at least 350 individuals who've been expelled just because they associated in some way with an organisation that the Labour leadership, in its wisdom, had decided to ban. I mean, this is McCarthyist language. It's extraordinary. Somebody pointed out earlier that they'd been terminated. I think it was Roger Silverman. You know, Daleks, my goodness, this is crazy stuff. So I mean, I'm going to put a question to you. Where is the opposition and what do we do? And I think the opposition is here. It's on the picket line with the nurses. It's in the trade unions, new and old, which are mobilising working people across the country. It's in all the campaigns in defence of refugee rights, for asylum seekers, for housing, for the right to food, the right to education, to roll back privatisation and you know, corporate interests in our public services. All those struggles are going on. And I say to you, this is not a time for various left groups, and Ian Saville's amazing visualisation of left splits this is serious. I mean, it was hilarious when he did it, but it's serious. This is not a time for individual groups to be fighting their corner and opposing one another. We need to pull together all those threads. If you're inside the Labour Party, if you're outside the Labour Party, if you're in a housing campaign, if you're involved with one of the new left movements, work together. Don't do things that will make it, you know, put other people in danger. We must work together. So the watchword, somebody's already said it, is solidarity, comrades. And I really look forward to working with you all in the future. Thank you very, very much. And thanks to Crispin once again. Cheers.
Round of applause for Naomi Wimborne-Idrissi. And our next speaker is Lindsay German from Stop the War.
Thanks very much, Crispin, and it's good to see so many people here today. I'd like to pay tribute to Jeremy Corbyn as something that's very, very rare, an honest politician and a principled politician. And I think when we see Boris Johnson stuffing the House of Lords with more of his mates, and when we see the way in which nearly all the MPs in Parliament lack the principles and conviction of Jeremy, we should be very, very proud that we have him as an MP and that we had him as leader of the Labour Party. When 9/11 happened in 2001, we were told we couldn't have an anti-war and peace movement. We told it would be too difficult. The events were so horrific, 3,000 people died in New York, that you wouldn't be able to demonstrate over that. We decided that probably wasn't right. And one of the first people I phoned was Jeremy Corbyn. I said, we're going to have a very big meeting in Friend's house in London. Can you come and speak at it? Jeremy never hesitated. He never asked all sorts of questions like who's going to be on the platform, what's going to be said, all this kind of thing. He said, yes, of course, it's a really serious issue of war and peace. I will be there. And in a way, if you look since then, that's 22 years ago now, Jeremy Corbyn has always been there when it comes to anti-war politics. He spoke on the biggest demonstration against ever in British society against the Iraq War and for Palestine. Let's remember it was both those slogans in 2003. When they published the dossier in September 2002, we said to Jeremy, can you go down on your bike and see what this dossier says, because they get it a few hours before everybody else, the MPs. Jeremy phoned up and said, don't worry, it's nothing to worry about, they haven't got any evidence. Now he knew that in September 2002, but Tony Blair and George Bush took us to war only a few months later with absolutely horrific consequences for everybody in the world, because they made the world a much more dangerous place. Jeremy has always been there through thick or thin, opposing these wars. He did it over Syria, he did it over Libya, he did it over Afghanistan and Iraq, and he is doing it today over Ukraine. Not because anybody in Stop the War supports what Russia is doing, but because we can see that what is happening with this war is it is going to be a worse and worse war, where the Ukrainian people are already suffering massively, but so will all sorts of other people in Europe suffer massively. And therefore the call for peace should be the absolute definite call that we make. And that call for peace has become a dirty word. You know, you're a peacemonger. Yeah, they love to throw that at Jeremy. He's a pacifist, he's got an allotment, all this kind of thing. But they're terrified of people who call for peace, because they're the warmongers, they're the arms dealers, they're the people who have made our world what it is today, and they're the people. We're now looking at the possibility of nuclear war and the possibility of wars on two fronts, both in the Pacific against China and in Europe over Ukraine. I know that Jeremy will always be with us on this question, and not just on this question, over Palestine, over the Kenyan Mau Mau who were tortured and imprisoned by the British during the 1950s, over the fighting in Sudan, where many British citizens are not being allowed to come to this country because they don't give a damn about refugees who aren't white and don't fit in with their agenda. I know on all these issues and on many other issues, Jeremy Corbyn stands with us. He stands against war. He stands for justice for everybody who's fighting for liberation. He stands against the employers and the bosses. He stands in support of the strikers. To me, I hope Jeremy is going to be our MP for many years to come. And I'll just conclude by saying that I think that Keir Starmer has been an absolute disgrace in the way that he's treated him. And believe me, I think that this is not what most people in this country think of Jeremy. They know he's decent, they know he's honest. That's just what they can't stomach in the Palace of Westminster.
Round of applause for Lindsay German. Right, no, I just want to say before the main speaker comes on, I just want to say he didn't really want us to celebrate his 40th because he doesn't want it to be all about him. That is the man, and I think that is the most wonderful quality that he's got, and it attracts me to politics, that there's someone like that who is like that. Now, we've heard a lot about Jeremy Corbyn today, but he's here, and I'm really pleased that he's come. So can you make as much noise as you can, like it's 2017, for Jeremy Corbyn?
Thank you, and big thank you to Crispin and all those that have put this event together here on Highbury Fields. These fields, historic, saved from developers, made a park for the people, and it's been a scene of joy, of open air local events and all kinds of things, and it's brought our communities together. And I'm very proud to have been the Member of Parliament for Islington North since 1983. And if the people still wish me to continue, my services are available. Because I was first elected here in 1983, and I first came to London in the late 60s and early 1970s. Those days, It didn't feel like the greatest life on earth to be growing up and living in Britain. But by comparison to what young people face today, it was very different. We had completely free education right through to university level. We had completely free NHS. We had access to work and reasonable wages with great rapidity and speed. There was a sense of security and certainty for many young people. And you had these voices, these chattering voices in the background saying the idea of a welfare state, the idea of unemployment benefit, the idea of pensions, the idea of real social security saps the moral fibre of the nation, and what we need to do is get rid of all of that. Those siren voices that we were hearing in the popular press were the same mentality that was developing the whole idea of neoliberal economics throughout the 1970s. Reagan in California, Thatcher in Britain, Keith Joseph in Britain, and various others, and Milton Friedman in Chile, where they imposed the most brutal monetarist regime on the people already being occupied by the Chilean army, having killed the government of Salvador Allende and those brilliant people. So those voices are the people that did so much to try and destroy the hopes of generations. Those voices that brought Thatcher into power in 1979, brought on the onslaught onto the coal industry, brought on the privatisation of mail, rail, brought on the privatisation of gas and water and electricity, and brought in all the anti-trade union laws and the public order bills to prevent demonstrations and so on. And so when you're in the midst of some of these great struggles, it isn't always obvious what the great surges of history are. But there are crucial moments in battles when you've got to pick sides. When the government of Margaret Thatcher went after the miners in 1984, she did it on the back of the 1983 election victory. I was very proud to be elected for this constituency, and I've got the manifesto I put out at that time, and I've got the maiden speech that I made in Parliament that summer, and I stand by every single word of what I said at that time. She then came after the miners, and the strike took place. It was bitter, it was long. And our community around here, most people around here have never seen a coal mine. There are obviously no mines in the area, but that sense of solidarity with the mining communities was massive. We set up the Islington Support the Miners campaign. We raised, I estimate, around £100,000 for the miners. That was an awful lot of money in 1984-85, from check-off payments for council workers and others who were donating 25 pence a week and things like that to the miners. And the government went after the miners' union, sequestered all its funds, tried to close down its operation, and so we had to then set up almost a parallel system to support the miners' families, because the government also forced legislation through Parliament, during which we stopped parliamentary proceedings by occupying the Mace to prevent it being used to put through. They were trying to put through legislation to prevent social security payments going to feed the children of miners' families. They were trying to starve them back to work. And that's why we set up this parallel system. And I've got a very vivid memory of getting the train from Finsbury Park, often do, down to King's Cross, carrying a co-op carrier bag. It was full, this co-op carrier bag, and it had some papers on top of it to disguise what was in it. I then went into the gentlemen's toilets at St Pancras Station, as you do, and I took this bag in with me into a cubicle, as you do, and I inadvertently mislaid it. and left it there. The next person who went in picked up the bag and went out with it. That next person was Peter Heathfield, the General Secretary of the NUM, who took thousands of pounds in cash to Doncaster to feed the miners' families all over this country. You see, on the left, we're inventive, we're imaginative. We think these ideas, we think of these things to do. And so it is about solidarity. But it's also about our local communities around here. The battle we had to build community centres, to get parks, to save services, to try and stop the government from destroying our local council by underfunding of it. The campaign that we mounted to defend the Whittington Hospital when we discovered that the accident and emergency department was due to close. How did we find that out? Because they weren't as smart as they thought they were. They mistakenly sent me an internal email to ask my views on closing of the A&E department. They thought I was Dr. Corbyn from the pathology department. And so that's how we found out about it. And we mounted a magnificent campaign. 5,000 people marched along the Holloway Road. And you know what? We won. The A&E department was saved, the Whittington Hospital was saved, and it's our hospital. And so when we campaign to defend services, that's the right and proper thing to do, of course it is. But I'm fed up with defending everything. I'm fed up with defending services. I don't want to fight just to defend the NHS. I'll fight till my dying day to the principle of healthcare free at the point of need as a human right. I will never leave that battle, never go away from it. But I also want a national care service, because if you think about it, all of us in this park at some point will need social care, or we will know a family member who needs social care, either from profound disability, from age, infirmity, all kinds of things. They might need social care. The service is inadequate, the people delivering the service are very badly paid, access to it is very limited, and so we end up with many women giving up their lives, their jobs, their careers, their hopes in order to care for somebody, not because they don't love them, but because there's no alternative available. If we can afford a national health service, if we can afford nuclear weapons, if we can afford wars, we can afford a national care service. Yes. And we have to be bold and make these demands and make these arguments very, very clearly of the kind of world that we can live in, to raise people's hopes, which is why I feel very strongly about the way in which young people are treated in our society. In school, you have the sort of unfortunate counterposition of a deeply stressed teacher standing in a classroom in front of a class of deeply stressed children about to be tested, and the teacher about to be tested by the testers who don't test the children and test each other. So we have this whole relationship of stress in our education system. And because of the pressure of league tables and the pressure of measured achievement in schools, students get moved to different streams. Students get taken out of exam applications because they're not going to get a good grade. It might damage the state of the school within a league table. Somewhere along the line, we seem to have lost our way. Education, nursery education, preschool activities, play, interaction, social interaction between children, music, art, theatre, imagination, and all these things should be part and parcel and central to the child's experience in school and access to college. And it makes for a happier and better society, which is why I was very proud to put into our manifesto as a starting point, we would end university tuition fees. We would restore maintenance grants at university so that young people who've managed to get into university and study don't come out with a £50,000 or more debt hanging over them. So these things are so important. And that's why all the disputes and strikes we're having at the moment also bring in other things. I was talking to a group of junior doctors, ridiculous name for people that have spent 7 years getting qualifications, still be called a junior doctor, but never mind. They were telling me their concerns were about hospital management, their concerns were about pay, obviously, but their concerns were also about their own housing situation. Young doctors in hospitals in London sharing flats because they can't afford to rent a flat of their own because the rent levels are so high. And our borough council here in Islington does everything it can to build all the council housing it can. Well done, Islington. Full support for them in building council housing where they can. But every site we develop is a negotiation with a private sector developer to find out how many social rented properties we can get out of it. We have a housing crisis, we have a homelessness crisis, and we have a profit and greed crisis brought about by a government that basically empowers the developers and the speculators over local authorities and social housing provision. And so, over the years, we've fought many battles against stock transfer, and many battles to get council housing built, and I'm very pleased to see there is some new council housing becoming available. But the effects on people's lives of the housing they're in. I mean, I was doing a street advice bureau this morning. I do them quite regularly. I just go and stand on a street somewhere and see who walks by and what sort of issues they're faced with in their lives. If you're bringing up 4 children, one of whom may have disabilities, may have special needs, and you're living in a 1 or 2 bedroom flat. With the best will in the world, there's going to be stress in that family. With the best will in the world, those children are not going to be able to do the homework in the way that other children can, have got their own bedrooms, their own computer, and a bigger property and a garden to go with it. So we start discriminating against the poorest working class kids from birth onwards. We need housing as a right, not as a profit centre for those that can make money out of things. This is all what we can and ought to be able to achieve in our world, and that's why I was proud to lead the Labour Party and put forward the manifestos that we did in 2017 and 2019. But I tell you this, when you rattle the cage of the richest and most powerful in our land, they do not like it. They do not like it one bit. And I have to say a huge thank you to the people of this community, my closest friends and comrades and allies, and particularly Laura, my wife, and my children, for the support that they have given during what has often been very difficult times when we've been under the cosh of abuse. But our job is not any stress that's placed on me. It's the stress of trying to bring up children in an overcrowded flat. The stress of being a triage nurse in a hospital when you haven't got enough beds to put people in. The stress of a mental health worker that can't find somewhere to put somebody when they're going through a very bad episode. Those are the stresses we create in our society because we're not prepared to spend the resources necessary to give people that decent life that they could and should have. And so our job is to do that. Our job is to unite people. Our job is to give people hope. And I'm full of hope of what can be achieved. And our borough represents people from all over the world. There are maybe 100 languages spoken within our borough. I don't know the exact figure, but there are a very large number. There are people from all over the world, and they teach us all so much. They teach us what they want to achieve and the contribution they want to make to our world. So when our media throw out abuse at people who are asylum seekers and refugees, I just say, what? Hold it for one moment. Just hold it. Those people that fled from the pogroms in Russia in the 19th century, Jewish people driven out of Russia in the 19th century, made their homes in the East End of London, made a fantastic contribution to our lives. Those that were driven out of Germany and Austria by the Nazis in the 1930s made their homes in this country and made a fantastic contribution to our lives. Those that are now being driven out of Afghanistan and other places because of poverty, of human rights abuse, because of torture, are looking for a place of safety in our world. Can we dial down the rhetoric that the government uses about marauding people trying to cross the channel to live in Britain? I went across to Calais and I talked to these apparently marauding navy that's there in Calais trying to invade this country. What do I find? Depressed, confused, poor, frightened people that had come from Afghanistan, from Iraq, from Libya, from Syria, from Eritrea, from Ethiopia, from lots of places. And they were terrified, they were frightened, and they were prepared to risk all to get in a leaking boat to try and get here because they thought they would get a place of safety here. We have a government here that now wants to send them to Rwanda and walk away from the European Convention on Human Rights and all the human rights laws that protect the rights of all of us. Can we just recognize these are human beings trying to survive in a very dangerous world and hold out that hand of friendship to them? And so it's been my pleasure and pride to represent this community. Sometimes you say things people don't agree with and don't like. Sometimes you say things that people disagree with. I respect that, I understand that. But I also understand it's my duty as the Member of Parliament to speak up against injustice where you come across it. And so I'll give you an example. The first thing I did on being elected to Parliament in 1983 was to invite Sinn Féin to come to Parliament to have talks. I was condemned by the Daily Mail, the Daily Express, the Daily Telegraph, the News of the World, as it was in those days, and many other papers. Okay, fine, that's their agenda. There was never going to be any peace without dialogue. There was never going to be any progress without dialogue. Ken Livingstone and others promoted that dialogue. That dialogue eventually led to the Belfast Agreement. And so you have to do that. The way in which this borough came together to support the African National Congress, many of whose leaders lived in this area. Oliver Tambo lived just down the road. Many others lived here. David Kitson just lived over the road there in Riversdale Road. All those people that were victims of apartheid, been in prison for apartheid, ended up here and then went back to South Africa. They weren't lauded at the time, but the bravery of the people in South Africa did end the apartheid system, did get Mandela out of prison, did change the whole history of the world by that action. And so when somebody is saying something that doesn't seem to appeal to our popular press and our editors, think again, think you've got to speak out and do stuff. Gay rights campaigners met down here, just by the tube station, got arrested, got abused. Eventually legislation was passed. Things do change. So when we fight back against racism in any form whatsoever in our world, fight back against discrimination of any form, we embolden those people that are fighting back in other places. Our community is a wonderful community. We have a wonderful past, we have an even better future, provided we stick with each other, support each other, have confidence and hope that we can create that better and more peaceful world for the future. As Lindsay pointed out, I was one of only 17 that voted against the war in Afghanistan in 2001. I was in a minority in voting against the war in Iraq. But it's amazing the funny memories that some of my colleagues in Parliament have, because I listen to their speeches and I add up what they say and add up the votes at the time, and there's a big difference. Can't explain it, but what I do know is that you've got to think through an issue and decide, is the future to be war, discrimination, destruction and ruination of our world, or is our world to be one of peace and justice and equality? You achieve the latter by challenging the citizens of power that have created the former. So, to everyone here, thank you so much for coming. Crispin, thank you for coming. Thank you so much for the music. Thank you for the solidarity. Together, together, together we are very, very strong. Thank you, my friends.
Jeremy Corbyn! I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming along today. I hope that your spirits have been raised by being together with each other and seeing all these great speakers and entertainers. And we're going to keep putting these shows on all over the country, and we'll do it again next year as well, right up to the general election, where we hope that we'll have Jeremy Corbyn MP holding the balance of power on his own. Thank you all. Thank you.